2nd, and it is 9:09 a.m. Staff, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Alding. Mr. Rodriguez.
Here.
Mr. Bass.
Here.
Ms. Conrad Seda.
Here.
Ms. Faustinos.
Here.
Ms. Gustafson.
Here.
Mr. Guthrow.
Here.
Ms. Hayes. Ms. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Henigman.
Here.
Mr. Keykeper.
Here.
Ms. Lane.
Here.
Ms. Loomer. Mr. Tolbert. Mr. Tolbert. Ms. Williamson.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Next up is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all please stand and join me. Thank you. And let's see. Before I begin, I believe I'm turning you over to Executive Director Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is Julie Reagan, TRPA's Executive Director. I have just a couple of brief announcements before we go to our next item with public interest comments. The first item is a warm welcome to Aaron Gagnon, and I will call Aaron up to the podium because he's going to say a little bit. But let me tell you, he's like, really? Do I have to do that? Aaron is our acting forest supervisor of the Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit of the U.S. Forest Service. And I wanted you all to meet him because the Forest Service, of course, is one of our integral partners here in the basin. TRPA and the Forest Service co-chair the Tahoe Interagency Executive Steering Committee, which is the advisory body over the Environmental Improvement Program. And Aaron and I had the pleasure to co-lead that group of about 30 or 40 people just recently at a meeting. He'll be here for 4 months, and he's coming from the Umatilla National Forest in Oregon, where he was the deputy forest supervisor. He has a great deal of experience throughout the United States working with the Forest Service, but he also has served in the U.S. Navy in both active duty and reserve capacities. And he has a BS in forest management from UC Berkeley and an MS in forest resources from Oregon State. And we just wanted to welcome him warmly to Team Tahoe. He came into the basin, I think, the week before July 4th weekend. Yes. So, you know, a little like right into the party there, literally. And I just wanted Aaron to introduce himself to the governing board and us to all give him a warm welcome. So, Aaron, if you want to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Julie. That was a great intro there. And you got a lot of information to include a picture of me. I'm not sure how that got in there, but that's awesome. So, do I have this mic correct? Can everybody hear me? Well, thank you again, Julie. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. So I am Aaron Gagnon. I'm the forest supervisor, acting forest supervisor here on the Lake Tahoe Basin. And as Julie mentioned, probably about 4 months that I'll be here. So about mid-October. And hopefully sometime during that time frame there, they'll fly the permanent, and, you know, hopefully by the end of the year, maybe the beginning of the year, there will be a permanent person in this position. That's the end goal. I know we all like the continuity and having that person that can be here to represent the Forest Service. So, and hopefully that works out. But yeah, it is great to be here. And as Julie mentioned, I came here about a couple weeks ago, right before the 4th of July. And I did not know that the 4th of July was a thing in the Lake Tahoe Basin. I really didn't. And people said, get ready, this is going to be it. And we, with the Forest Service, our partners, the community, the counties, the local sheriffs and everything, really helped out and you know, got that to a pretty good success. I know there were probably a couple incidents and everything that happened, but overall, I think, you know, compared to other years and everything, it was really it was a really good one. And it was a good intro to Lake Tahoe, what it has to offer, what some of the Forest Service facilities are like, and just to get a chance to go around the lake and see that and see how many people are interested in this place. It's quite incredible and beautiful. And, you know, over the next couple months, you know, we're here, it's summer, you know, and, you know, when I look at, you know, what we're focusing on as the basin and the Forest Service overall, you know, it's working with you guys, it's working with our partners to make sure we get these projects going here during the summer and make sure, you know, the work's getting done. We got our people out in the field, you know, we're representing, but also it's fire season. And that's, you know, here in the basin, you may not notice it or see it. It seems, relatively calm. I don't want to jinx anything, but if you do look around the nation right now, it's game on for fire season. And especially up where I'm coming from in what I call Region 6, but that would be Oregon, Washington. There's a lot going on. And what that means for us is, as the basin, as the forests that neighbor us here, we're supporting that. And, we make sure we have folks here to support, in case something happens, but we're also supporting, those folks in other areas of the country right now. It's definitely, game on, and resources are getting scarcer and everything as we get into the summer. And, we're toward the end of July, but we've got August, and usually that's the peak of it. So, that's kind of a big thing that we focus on during this time frame. But, as I get into this position, as I meet folks, I'm definitely learning a lot. I'm learning a lot of new acronyms. I'm learning a lot of new agencies, partners, programs, and we definitely support those. And I'm here to learn, and I'm here to keep those going and do, represent the forest well as we, keep things like the EIP and all those moving forward. And looking forward to the Tahoe Summit. That's the next big event that's coming up. So I'll be there for that. But overall, I'm just very excited to be here. Very excited to meet you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me a couple of minutes to talk up here, and look forward to working with you through the next couple of months. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. We know you're very busy, so if you have to scoot, we've got you. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Aaron. Very nice to have you here. I also, wanted to acknowledge that the person sitting to my right is not John Hester today. So a little change up at the dais, and we're going to do introductions of new staff, but I wanted to put that out first of all, to let you know that Paul Nielsen is our new Deputy Director and Chief Planning Officer. Yes, and you all know Paul very well, particularly those of you who have served on the board for some years, like Shelley Aldine and others. Paul is a treasure at TRPA. He's been at the agency for 30 years, but came to us from Lake County after he completed his education at Humboldt State with a Bachelor of Science in Geology and Water Resource Policy. So you might not have known that about Paul, even though you've worked with him for a very long time. And he also has been a fire captain and with Eastern Alpine Fire and Rescue. And leadership is, I think, in Paul's DNA. So we are absolutely pleased and proud to welcome him into the executive team and to preside here at the dais with our executive members at the governing board. And so more to come, but just wanted to acknowledge Paul in that new position and welcome him here. And John Hester is still around working with Paul through the middle of September to assure a seamless transition of the planning team and our staff. But our staff are very jazzed. Paul has always been a leader at the agency, and I think our team is pretty excited about the next chapter. So welcome. And that is, I appreciate the chance to do that at the beginning.
Yeah, that's awesome. Paul, it's so well earned. It's really good to see you up here. And John, working or lurking, or all of the above. Well earned as well. Thank you, Julie. All right, let's move on then to public interest comments. This is agenda item 3. This is time for any member of the public wishing to address the governing board on an agenda item, including items on the consent calendar, may do so at this time. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. I'm going to start in the room and then we'll go online. Anyone wishing to address the governing board at this time in person, please come up and press the button on the microphone and go ahead. Morning, Gavin.
Good morning. Yep, I have comments on VMT today. Gavin Feiger, Policy Director, Keep Tahoe Blue. I'm going to read them a little bit. Sorry, I hate to do that, but there's a complicated subject, the VMT agenda item coming up, and we spent some time trying to put together some thoughtful comments. So we strongly support the significance of progress we've made. The region has made with the 777 framework. We were part of that since the beginning with the bi-state. We've advocated and directly made investments in microtransit, transit operations, active transportation, and regional funding, and worked alongside all the partners in this room and others to help move these efforts forward. And the progress is real, it's worth celebrating, but that's not the question before you today, whether or not we're making progress. The question is whether the specific funding milestone, the DP 5.4B, that has been met, that ongoing regional funding source that's dedicated to transportation and reasonably expected to meet the needs identified in our regional transportation plans. So based on the record before the board, we don't believe that standard's been met. The region has secured really important funding. We've had grants, project level funding commitments, appropriations, more than $20 million a year. but it's not the same as durable, ongoing funding like it was envisioned when the regional plan policy was created. And that's still really important. Without that, it can change. Like right now, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of momentum to raise this funding, but there's a lot of priorities in the basin. So if this pressure goes away, it'd be very easy to move all of our political capital onto the next thing. And it's really important because it's not just the funding transportation discussion, right? This is linked to transportation, and the VMT threshold are linked because vehicle miles traveled affect lake clarity. Our transportation system is one of the largest contributors to clarity decline and are reducing water quality. Our position has been consistent on this since the threshold was adopted in 2021, and even as the negotiations went into developing that threshold. And we supported the package because it was like really well thought out, and it was all these pieces that work together. You can't just like pull them apart. It created a careful balance between flexibility and accountability. And we supported the shift to a per capita VMT standard away from the just flat VMT cap, because it included these clear funding milestones and what were supposed to be automatic repercussions and consequences if we weren't meeting them. And we argued in 2023, and we've said every year since, multiple times, since that milestone was supposed to be met, that this one-time funding is great, but it's not the same as the ongoing funding we need. So what we're asking is to recognize the success of the 777 framework while still finding that the funding milestone 5.4B has not yet been attained. The conclusions are not inconsistent. They reflect the reality that Tahoe has made important progress, but we still have a lot of work to do. Therefore, we respectfully urge you to take a formal action and acknowledge the success of the 777 strategy, but not meeting that milestone B. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Gavin. Anyone else in the room wishing to make comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, let's go online. If you wish to make comment to the governing board at this time, please either click the raise hand button on your Zoom screen or dial *9. Catherine, do we have anyone online wishing to make comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 2 hands raised online.
Okay.
The first hand up is Jessica Tucker-Mole. Jessica, please unmute to make your comment.
Hello, good morning, governing board members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, governing board
Yes.
members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, governing board members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Hello, this is Supervising Deputy Attorney General Jessica Tucker-Mole. Our office submitted a letter yesterday afternoon. It was a bit late in the afternoon. Apologies for the timeliness. We just wanted to make certain that the letter was received and had an opportunity to be considered. Again, this is with respect to agenda item 7.7D, which Gavin just spoke about. Thank you all very much.
The next hand raised is Toby Tyler. Toby, please unmute to make your comment.
Yeah, Toby Tyler speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club's Tahoe Area Group regarding item 7D. We urge you to reject the staff recommendation on this item. This issue is not whether transportation funding has improved. It is about whether TRPA is complying with its own binding regional plan and the threshold standards adopted in 2021. When you replace the absolute VMT threshold with VMT per capita metric, the public relied on a crucial promise that adaptive management, mandatory funding milestones under policy DP 5.4 and automatic safeguards under policy DP 5.6 would ensure environmental protection. Those safeguards are now being ignored. A series of one-time grants and political commitments under the 777 initiative is not an ongoing dedicated regional funding source. Progress is not compliance. Furthermore, staff's argument that no action is required because an advisory committee didn't declare a failure misrepresents the compact. The compliance determination belongs exclusively to you, the governing board. If TRPA can bypass mandatory safeguards whenever milestones are missed, then adaptive management ceases to exist. and the legal rationale supporting the 2021 VMT threshold update collapses. We respectfully request that the board, one, formally determine compliance with non-compliance with policy DP 5.4B. Find that the record does not demonstrate an ongoing dedicated funding source. 3, acknowledge that policy DP 5.6 adaptive management measures are triggered. 4, direct staff to prepare a comprehensive compliance report on the entire 2021 VMT update. Threshold update. 5, reaffirm that mandatory environmental safeguards cannot be waived through administrative inaction. Environmental thresholds are only meaningful if their implementation measures are strictly enforced. Show the public that the regional plan is a binding commitment, not an optional suggestion. Please see our more extensive written comments sent yesterday evening. Thank you.
And the last hand raised, the Zoom name is iPhone Lori. Lori, if you can unmute, state your full name for the record to make your comment.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I would like to express my concern about using glyphosate in the Caldor burn area. I believe that we should ban all synthetic herbicides and crew thinning in the Caldor burn area. I'm concerned about this because it's harmful to the soil. It's the wildlife health and the carcinogenic factors regarding glyphosate. So I would like to suggest that you please reevaluate using glyphosate in the Caldor burn area.
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment.
Thank you very much. With that, we will move on to agenda item 4, which is approval of the agenda. Director Reagan, are there any changes?
No changes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will deem the agenda approved as posted. Agenda item 5 is next. This is approval of the minutes. We have a draft set of minutes from June 24th on page 17 of your packet. I'm looking for either any changes or a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I have a couple of small, rather minor edits that I've shared with Maria, but I'm prepared to make a motion.
Please do. Thank you.
I move to approve the governing board minutes from June 24th, 2026 as amended.
Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have TRPA's consent calendar. This is agenda item 6. There are 3 items on consent, all of which were reviewed by the Ops and Governance Committee this morning. Brooks, can we please have a Brooks, Ops, Brooks.
There's multiple
Brooks. It seems like it because you do so much work. Could we please have a report out from the Ops Committee?
Thank you, Madam Chairs. Yes, Ops and Governance did meet this morning, and we are recommending that the board approve the 3 requests on consent, which include the City of South Lake Tahoe for a total of $96,240 in various mitigation fees for the Upper Bijou Park Creek Restoration Project. We're also recommending approval of Douglas County's request for $160,000 for the Kale Complete Street Project, and also Placer County's request for $38,000 to help support the Emerald Bay shuttle and parking management project. So we recommended unanimously to the board approval of all 3 of those.
Thank you. Any board members have questions or comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Maria, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Alding?
Yes.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Conrad Seda?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrow?
Yes.
Ms. Faustinos?
Yes.
Ms. Hill? Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Keycapper,
Yes.
Mr. Hennigan,
Yes.
Mr. Tolbert, Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, that motion passes.
Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 7, which is planning matters. 7A is cultivating community, conserving the basin environmental impact statement project alternatives, which information can be found on page 91. And I believe I'm turning it over to Jacob.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One moment. My name is Jacob Stock, Senior Planner with TRPA. I will give a short presentation here on cultivating community, conserving the basin. Then I'll leave. I'll be at Mott's playing video blackjack, and Paul Nielsen will be here, however, Chief Planning Officer, to answer any questions you may have. No? Okay, I'll stick around for questions too then at the end of the presentation. So I'm here to talk about the policy alternatives for cultivating community, conserving the basin. This is the current and last phase of the Tahoe Living Strategic Priority. It's aimed at adapting TRPA's policies and regulations to support workforce housing, to meet our region's housing needs, and to maintain and improve our environmental protections. So at the heart of this project is really this idea that housing our local workforce and environmental protection go hand in hand. We're also supporting key goals of the regional plan through this project, such as walkability, sustainable communities, and land use patterns that help us meet our air quality, water quality, and greenhouse gas goals. So if you want to feel old, I'll tell you that we've been working on this current phase of the project for nearly 2 years now. And you recommended moving forward with our policy proposal in January. Now we're working on an environmental impact statement, or EIS, for the project. And today I'll follow up on some key scoping comments that shaped our environmental impact statement and the project alternatives in the EIS. I'll be focusing on project alternatives today specifically. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little overview. I'm going to give an overview of the TRPA EIS process. I'll talk about the policy alternatives in the EIS. What are they? Why are they important? I think you'll find that policy alternatives are a really useful tool for understanding the potential impact and effectiveness of a big policy change like what we're proposing here with cultivating community. And I hope that understanding these alternatives will help you make a confident and informed decision when we bring these amendments to you next year. So just keeping you informed and about the alternatives, and I think they'll be a useful tool for you later. Next slide. Okay, so if you have it in front of you right now, it's a good time to crack open your copy of the Bi-State Compact. That's TRPA's Environmental Review Authority comes from Article 7 of that compact, so you can follow along there. So an EIS is TRPA's most rigorous level of environmental study. This environmental document that we're doing for this project, Cultivating Community, is a TRPA EIS only. You've reviewed other documents that are sometimes joint CEQA or joint NEPA documents, sometimes all three. But this one will just be a TRPA document following TRPA's rules for environmental analysis. As always, we begin our review with our thresholds. Those are the basis for our standards of significance. The EIS will identify potential environmental impacts, whether those impacts are significant, and it will seek to mitigate any impacts if there are any. One of the ways we do this is by comparing potential impacts of different policy alternatives to the existing condition or to each other. So we look at different ways to solve a policy problem, including not changing anything at all. And next slide, please. And so that's pretty much what a policy alternative is. Alternatives help us understand the impact of a proposed action relative to other solutions or non-solutions and relative to the existing condition on the ground. We always study a no project alternative. And this is important because the impact of doing nothing is not nothing. And there is an impact to that as well. And we need to understand that environmental impact of doing nothing in order to understand the impact of the project. So we're analyzing all of the alternatives that I'm going to share with you. We're analyzing all of those equally, but staff will make a recommendation as this comes forward for approval. And staff is also preparing a memo looking at each alternative and how each alternative affects the project objectives. And that's going to be separate from the EIS, but also a useful tool for you all as this comes forward for adoption. Next slide. Okay, so as promised, we'll be looking at a no project alternative that evaluates the impact of TRPA's existing policies without the changes proposed through cultivating community. So this means that we'll be looking at the environmental and housing cost impact of existing policy conditions, including the regional plan, the code of ordinances, and any amendments that have been made to those documents to date. So that includes the Tahoe Living Phase 2 amendments, since those are existing policies that were adopted by the board. As I mentioned earlier, TRPA's rules require a no project alternative in the EIS, but it's also important to note that during our public comment period, our public scoping period for the EIS, we received several public comments that highlighted the importance of studying a no project alternative. To study this alternative, we are looking at current commute patterns, among other things. So our current commute patterns include conditions where much of our workforce is housed outside the basin. It's roughly 50% of our workforce. And so those are current conditions, and that's the basis that we're looking at least for the traffic and air quality portion of this alternative. Next slide. So this next alternative we're calling Housing Forward. This alternative focuses on adapting TRPA policy to meet the regional housing need, primarily through incentives for new workforce housing. And so the policy recommendations in this alternative came out of the Cultivating Community public outreach process we've been doing over the last few years. You saw it in attachment A to the packet that you advanced in January. So this alternative is really studying those policies from attachment A that you directed us to study in the EIS. This prioritizes policy and code amendments to support a range of housing types, including affordable apartments, townhomes, duplexes, fourplexes, and accessory dwelling units. And this alternative attempts to accomplish this through changes to the development review process, to our fees, development rights, coverage requirements, and use definitions, all within the population and growth projections of the 2012 EIS. And that's really important because we're really trying to direct that remaining growth from the 2012 regional plan towards smaller, more affordable housing in this alternative. Next slide. So the last alternative I'll summarize focuses on utilizing existing housing stock to meet Tahoe's housing needs. We call this the housing preservation alternative. This alternative evaluates meeting the housing need by trying to unlock underutilized homes or vacant housing stock through local programs like lease to locals, for example, down payment assistance, or heightened restrictions on short-term rentals. We chose to study this alternative in part because several public comments requested that we focus on utilizing existing housing in this project or exclude incentives for new workforce housing. So that's how we came to this alternative through a lot of input that we got from the public. Next slide. Now that I've summarized the three policy alternatives, what's next? The EIS review draft and proposed amendments to the regional plan and code of ordinances will be out for review in fall 2026, so fall of this year. We'll have a minimum 60-day public review period of those documents and take what we hear from the public and use that to draft our final EIS and proposed amendments for the project. And we hope that you'll consider those amendments in spring of 2027. So next year is when we plan to bring this forward to you all for consideration. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you. And just a reminder to the board, this is informational only, so questions or comments? Shelley.
Thank you, Jacob. And your shirt of many colors. That's the highlight of your presentation.
Thank you.
In my mind, the housing preservation alternative, and the housing forward alternative, they're not mutually exclusive. My assumption is that depending upon the results of the environmental document, they could be combined. I think they're both useful in order to achieve our goals of increasing workforce housing.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Aldean. That's correct. And when this comes forward to the board, you all will have an opportunity to take a look at all of the studies we've done through the EIS, through the evaluation of the policies against the project goals, and make a decision about advancing one package or a combination of packages.
Okay, thank you.
Looking that way. Belinda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my questions, and maybe they're more like comments, not exactly questions, but I'm sure, based on a lot of the policies that TRPA has, implemented over the last several years regarding public outreach and outreach in particular to communities that might not normally come to these types of hearings. I just want to be reassured that kind of activity is going to take place again, that you'll be going to some non-traditional groups to make sure that, in fact, the most impacted members that are coming in from outside of the basin, mainly in our service industry, I would assume, and maybe that's not the right assumption, but I would expect that a great number of them are. I think one of the challenges that I see is that many of those workers that are coming in from outside of the basin live in places where they're trying to support a family, and therefore housing that would serve a family versus an individual is going to be, again, in my experience, that might be the case. But, I think we need to collect some data to validate it. And maybe, that's something that's already been done. Are we creating housing that will actually meet and draw the needs of those workers that are coming in from outside of the basin? So if we increase the stock for studios and we get no takers because, that's not going to, address the needs of that employee, are we doing ourselves a disservice? So I know that might not necessarily be a real specific ask in this process, but I think it's something we need to do. So that's another just issue that I wanted to bring up in terms of how that would get handled. But otherwise, I think this is, great outline, great, approach to the issue. But again, just my concern is that, are we really addressing the needs of the workers in order to entice them to come, to live in the basin and, not abandon, but, leave their current homes?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Faustinos. And normally when I do these presentations, I have a few slides highlighting our public outreach process because we are really proud of the public outreach that we've done for this project. It's part of this amazing grant that we've gotten from the state of California. The REAP grant has allowed us to really ramp up our public outreach and rethink how we do public outreach. And so we've done some really great stuff. Few things I want to highlight are doing mini workshops, Spanish language workshops, going directly to service organizations to talk to them and talk to the people they serve. And we've gotten a lot of input about family size housing, like you said, and we've integrated that into our policy proposal. I think you'll find, and so we are proud of what we've done in that regard. Obviously, there's always room for improvement there, but I think this project has really stepped up our game in terms of outreach and responding to the needs of our workforce.
Thank you. And at one point, Vice Vince, your hand was up. Did you still do you have a question or a comment?
No, Shelley asked the question. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that I think we're always going to be promoting the reuse of existing housing for workforce and our existing buildings as well. that those weren't exclusive, that they can be implemented together. So thank you.
Thank you. All right,
And
please.
Madam
Oh.
Chair, I just had a
Oh.
quick comment.
Go
So
ahead,
I'm
Cody.
curious, as we look through all this and when we're approving development that is creating more workforce, which isn't a bad thing, and I'm cautious almost to this, but because I know how hard it is to get a business open, and I don't want to make it harder. However, some of these developments I think they should come with permit requirements that make a developer create workforce housing as they're developing businesses that are gonna need workforce. And I know that some developers do that just as being a good developer, but are we doing anything in our policy to require that and looking at what that could do as we are seeing so much redevelopment, making it on the developer that, hey, if you're creating 25 new jobs, you've got to at least make 12 new units of affordable housing. Is that a policy consideration that we're looking at?
I can respond to that a little bit. So the answer is that we explored a requirement like that and ultimately did not pursue that. We do have an existing policy that requires a certain percentage of housing be dedicated to the workforce. So when a new condominium building comes up, a 10% of the square footage of that building needs to be dedicated to deed restricted housing. We're looking at making some tweaks to that to make that more effective at creating workforce housing. But we haven't recommended a policy necessarily to require employers or new businesses to build housing.
And like I said, I'm very reluctant to want to make it harder to get a business open in town. And it definitely is challenging for small businesses, no doubt. But I almost just wonder if exploring, for larger developments and those kind of things, making that a requirement. And I'm wondering why, I guess I kind of maybe know why, because it makes it more difficult. And sometimes we're trying to find that equal balance. But yeah, why not go to that length? I guess I would ask.
Cody,
Mr.
this is
Hester.
John Hester. I wanted to add to Jacob's response. That is something that at least one local government, Placer County, already does. So it's not that we have prohibited, it's that some of the local governments have taken that initiative as well. So it would be something that I guess we could talk about doing if the local government doesn't already have something in place, but we would not want to preempt something that's already in place and working.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to explore. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Guston. I think it's worth exploring.
Madam Chair, I
Please.
just thank you, John, for bringing that up. We're proud of our employee workforce housing requirements, although I would say we haven't had any major projects move forward yet to show that it is working. But there, as other than Palisades, was one great example of those commitments that we have asked for from new projects, new business and commercial development. So thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. And I saw Mr. Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Quick question. In terms of identifying housing that's underutilized or vacant, what is the method that you're kind of capturing those numbers? And the second piece for policy, is childcare a part of the issue that we're looking at as well? I know childcare is a big component for costs, expenditures for new families, and it may be a way to, I know it doesn't address the housing need, but it is a component with the dealing with the financial burden that many Nevadans face now in terms of financial hardship. I'm curious if that's part of the strategy as well.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Rodriguez. I will start with the first question. So we're still working on the details of that alternative 3, how to implement the utilization of underutilized housing. But for example, we're looking at ways for jurisdictions to demonstrate an effort towards ensuring that a percentage of their housing is accessible to the workforce. So we're really that alternative really ultimately focuses a lot on tools that local jurisdictions have. And so we're capturing, we're trying to craft policy to accomplish that goal. And we're looking at ways to use our authority to leverage the outcomes we want to see there. But we really are focusing on local tools with that program, because those are the tools that are able to accomplish that goal of utilizing vacant housing. Sorry, that was a little bit of a word salad there, but to summarize, we're working out the details of that alternative. As far as childcare, that's not been within the scope of this project, so we haven't looked at that. But point, very well taken, that's part of the calculus of the cost. I certainly know someone with a young child. That's part of the calculus of the cost of living here.
All right, not seeing any other hands.
My hand is raised, Madam Chair. Alexis
I'm sorry,
Hill.
Alexis.
Hi. I had the feeling. So I think that part of the issue with being able to address the existing housing and regulate, and Nevada law and California law are different. Can you just clarify that? And maybe the board can get like a memo from legal on that too, because I think that there's not always an understanding how hard it is to do these things in Nevada.
Thank you, Miss Hill. This is Graham St. Michelle. I actually missed what you said there. I don't know if anyone else heard that a little bit more clearly, but maybe you could repeat your question.
I was just saying that it's very difficult to figure out regulations or requirements for local governments on utilizing existing housing, because California and Nevada state law are extremely different, and local jurisdictions in Nevada have different allowances on what they can do without state authority. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, and I was thinking that it would be helpful if potentially we could get a memo from legal talking about that and what the compact is limited on doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're, as Jacob mentioned in his presentation, those policies for that alternative of what we've been calling unlocking existing housing are still under review. And that's part of the process. They'll be included in the draft EIS. It's coming out through the draft EIS. And so as part of this development, we are looking at what is TRPA's authority versus non-TRPA versus local government. And so we are looking at that, and hopefully I take your suggestion to heart there about a memo, and whether it is in the form of a memo or something else, but there'll be some additional input from us all, including legal, as we come out with those policies or proposals.
Thank you.
And hey, Alexis, I'm so sorry. I can't see you on my screen at all. I don't know. So if you have another question or comment, just shout at me, okay?
Thank you.
Shelley?
I may be mistaken, but I don't think this alternative contemplates condemning homes to make them available for workforce housing. I mean, this is hopefully going to be a voluntary program, and what we're going to be relying on are incentives as opposed to, arbitrary rules that are certainly not within our jurisdiction as an agency. So I don't know if that has anything to do with Alexis's question, but I suspect it might.
Okay, yeah, this is Graham St. Michelle. I certainly not heard that proposal floated about condemning homes. So that is not something, and of course that would be something, that we'd very hard look at our authority. So
I was just talking about requiring placemate or requiring down home assistance. That was what I was talking about. Those kind of things. Those kind of things to require of local governments.
And I guess I thought that as we created a bi-state compact to kind of be able to make Tahoe have its own development rights, but I don't want to get too far into this. I guess that's kind of why you're asking for a legal memo, Masilla, and I agree that'll be great to get. But it seems like that's why we have the TRPA governing board, is to make these things. I know with California RENA and some of those things that kind of don't apply to us because we have this bi-state compact. But anyways, interesting discussion, and I would be very interested in the legal memo as well.
All right, thanks everyone. Again, that was just informational. So let's move on to our next agenda item, which is 7B, which is also for informational purposes only. Information on this can be found on page 109. This is the EIP project implementation update. And Shannon.
Hi, good morning, Chair, Governing Board members. Thank you. My name is Shannon Friedman with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and I have the privilege today to give you an update on environmental improvement projects that are currently being updated and also are currently being implemented, and also update you on projects that this board has approved over recent years. Next slide, please. For newer members, I'm going to give a brief history of the environmental improvement program. Lake Tahoe is known for its famed water clarity, at one point reaching depths of up to 100 feet, but development and disturbance led to a decline in that clarity. And so as a result, the environmental improvement program was developed in 1997. The goal of the EIP was to restore Lake Tahoe's clarity while also improving forest health, watersheds, habitat, and also implement TRPA's environmental thresholds. The Environmental Improvement Program is a partnership made up of more than 80 partners, including federal, state, local agencies, the nonprofit sector, the private sector, and the Washoe Tribe of California and Nevada. Together, this partnership plans, advocates for, and implements environmental improvement projects. Since its inception, the partnership has implemented over 900 projects, with up to 100 projects being implemented each year. Together, these investments deliver measurable improvements for the environment. Today, I'm going to highlight a set of projects that will be implemented this year. I can't touch on all of them, or even all of them that were identified in the staff report, because there's just not enough time. But all of the information can be found on the EIP tracker. Next slide, please. Forest health projects restore our forests to protect them from catastrophic wildfire, improve habitat, and also make forests and our communities more resilient in the face of a changing climate. Next slide. The Glenbrook Homeowners Association is currently implementing the Glenbrook Utility Underground Project. Glenbrook is located in Douglas County on the east shore of Lake Tahoe, and they are going to be undergrounding 5.5 miles of utility. This year, they will be undergrounding the last mile, and then the project will be complete. The primary goal of this project is to reduce the threat of wildfire, but when you underground utilities, you also have scenic improvements, and it increases the reliability of their services. These are some images of the work going on in Glenbrook. The picture on the left is actually the Glenbrook Cemetery in that community. Who knew they had a cemetery there, but they do. But it's a good example of a before picture where you can see the above ground utilities and overgrown vegetation. And then afterwards, the utilities are underground and they've cleared vegetation, implementing defensible space. So this area is now less receptive to wildfire, and it also improves the scenic quality of that area. There's also an image of an overhead utility line in Glenbrook that is visible not only from the Glenbrook community, but also Lake Tahoe. So undergrounding that utility will, again, improve fire safety, but improve the aesthetics from Glenbrook, as well as from the shores of Lake Tahoe, which improves the scenic threshold of Lake Tahoe. Next slide, please. California State Parks is implementing the Burton Forest Restoration Project. This is located at Burton Creek State Park. That state park is located on the north shore of Lake Tahoe, between Tahoe City and Lake Forest. This project will treat 132 acres in the state parks, which is a very high fire hazard severity zone, and it will build upon existing treatments creating a contiguous area of reduced fuel loading, protecting at-risk communities. This year, they will burn 53 acres of piles within the state park. And these pictures just show a good example of before and after treatment. On the left is a before picture, and then the middle is in the middle of treatment when they're getting ready to burn the piles, and then on the right, after treatment. Next slide, please. Nevada State Parks is currently implementing the Van Sickle Hazardous Fuels Reduction Project at Van Sickle by State Park. This is located in State Line, Nevada, just directly adjacent to the tourist casino core. Their projects will be just on the Nevada side. This area is a very popular recreation park with lots of trails, and the state of Nevada also has other improvements planned, like a visitor center and employee housing. The state of Nevada will be treating 40 acres through hand thinning, chipping, and pile burning, focusing primarily adjacent to the recreation trails and planned improvements. And this just shows treatment along a trail where they focused on dead and diseased and dying trees, making the trail safer for users. Next slide, please. The USDA Forest Service Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit is continuing to implement the South Shores Treatment Project. The areas in yellow on the map are all the areas that they are treating through thinning the forest there. Since the project started in 2022, they have treated over 523 acres, and this year they plan to treat an additional 500 acres. Next slide, please. Watersheds and water quality projects improve lake clarity while also improving habitat. They do this by treating stormwater runoff from the urban development, restoring stream environment zones and floodplains. They also protect Lake Tahoe from the threat of aquatic invasive species. Next slide. Go back one. There we go. The Nevada Department of Wildlife is implementing the Third Creek Fish Management Structure in Third Creek in Incline Village, Nevada. This is part of the Lahontan Cutthroat Trout Feasibility Study. This is a priority to see if Lahontan Cutthroat Trout can thrive in Lake Tahoe and spawn in its tributaries. It's important because Lahontan Cutthroat Trout is the only native trout species in Lake Tahoe. It's an important species for the Washoe tribe of California, Nevada, and its habitat has declined due to habitat disturbance as well as other species competing for it, like the rainbow trout. NDOW installed this temporary fish management structure to catch fish and allow Lahontan Cutthroat Trout to be moved upstream in the watershed so they can continue to spawn. This temporary fish management structure has proven to be successful, so they are now implementing a permanent fish management structure on Third Creek. Next slide, please. The City of South Lake Tahoe is implementing the multi-benefit Tahoe Valley Stormwater and Greenbelt Improvement Project. This is at the Y in the City of South Lake Tahoe. This project treats stormwater runoff from the roadways and development areas, improves the stream environment zone, as well as constructs new bike trails. It will treat 12.8 miles of roadway, restore 1.5 miles of stream environment zone, and construct 0.5 miles of new trail. And this project will be complete this year. And these pictures just show flooding and erosive roadside shoulders that the project will fix. Next slide, please. The Third and Rosewood Creek Water Quality Improvement Project is being implemented by Washoe County in a watershed in Incline Village, Nevada. The Third and Rosewood Creeks are a priority watershed due to high sediment load, and this project will treat stormwater runoff from the roadways and upland development by stabilizing roadside shoulders, improving drainage facilities, and installing infiltration basins. This project has started this year and will take multiple years to construct. Next slide. The Aquatic Invasive Species Program protects Lake Tahoe from the threats of non-native species, and it includes both the prevention program through our boat inspection programs and the Tahoe Keepers program, as well as the control program, which aims to eradicate and control the populations of existing non-native species in Lake Tahoe. Next slide, please. The motorized boat inspection stations have proven to be very effective at stopping the introduction of new invasive species, but there is a great concern over non-motorized watercraft spreading invasive species because it's a lot harder to control that. Those non-motorized watercraft can really launch anywhere. So there's a large effort to educate and make it easy for people to clean, and dry their watercraft to prevent the spread of invasive species. TRPA has purchased 3 non-motorized aquatic invasive species cleaning stations known as CD3 machines, pictured here. These allow users to easily clean, drain, and dry their boat either before or after entering into Lake Tahoe. As I said, TRPA owns 3 of these. One is permanently at Meeks Bay in partnership with the Washoe Tribe. One is permanently in Sand Harbor, and one rotates and is currently at Kiva Beach in South Lake Tahoe. In June alone, there were 495 uses at Meeks Bay and 318 at Kiva Beach. So 813 unique uses of the CD3 machines, showing that people are really using them and it's effective at preventing the spread of aquatic invasive species into Lake Tahoe. Next slide. Control of existing populations is also a priority of the program. We do this by a variety of methods, including installing bottom barriers, hand pulling, and diver-assisted suction. Some priority projects that are occurring this year include the Tahoe Keys Fragmentation Containment Project, hand pulling of aquatic invasive plants in the Pope Marsh in South Lake Tahoe, and then aquatic invasive species surveillance and plant removal in Emerald Bay. Surveillance of the whole Lake Tahoe water is also ongoing this year, so they are able to identify any new populations of invasive species and rapidly treat them, which helps keep the populations at bay and reduce the cost of treating those areas. Next slide. Sustainable recreation projects include new bike trails, maintaining existing bike trails, improving trailheads and new trailheads, as well as improving recreation sites. I'm not going to touch on transportation projects here because Nick Haven gave a really thorough update on transportation projects at the May Governing Board. So we'll focus on recreation here only. But recreation projects really just help people enjoy all of the recreation that Tahoe has to offer while protecting natural resources. Next slide. The Nevada Department of Transportation and Tahoe Transportation District are currently implementing the Spooner Mobility Hub and Watercraft Inspection Station. This multi-benefit project is located off of State Route 28 in Douglas County, directly across from Spooner State Park. It is a key project in the State Route 28 Corridor Management Plan that will improve safety along the corridor, protect natural resources, and encourage alternative modes of transportation, including transit and biking and walking. This project will construct 250 spaces parking lot to replace parking that currently occurs along the roadside shoulder. It will include a transit stop and a permanent watercraft inspection station. Next slide, please. There's an error on this slide that says North Tahoe PUD. It's actually the Tahoe City Public Utility District that is implementing the Diane Feinstein West Shore Trail Rehabilitation Project. This project will rehabilitate 13.1 miles of existing trail on the west shore of Lake Tahoe from Tahoma all the way north to Carnelian Bay. And while it is really important and we put a lot of investment into constructing new trails, it is equally important to maintain and improve the investment that was originally been made by improving upon existing trails. This segment will go from Sunnyside to Idlewild, and you can see an example of the trail here. The edges are eroding. There's a lot of cracking from roots. And then an example of a new trail has improved signage, resurfacing, and then it has like illuminated stop sign to really improve the safety of that trail. Next slide. The Nevada Division of State Parks is continuing to implement the Tunnel Creek Alternative Trail located in Incline Village, Nevada. This 2.28 mile single track trail will link the East Shore Trail and the Incline Flume Trail. Currently, the only way to connect these two is through the Tunnel Creek Road. That is a very busy road that is steep, sandy, and highly erosive. So this new single track trail will provide an alternative that is more sustainable and reduces user conflicts. This project started in 2023 and will be complete this year. There's actually a ribbon cutting being scheduled later in the year, so look out for that. And I encourage you to come to check out the great new trail. Next slide, please. The investment in EIP is based off of the most recent science. It also includes tracking and accountability to make sure that we are transparent to the public, and a stewardship program that encourages visitors and residents to take a part in restoring Lake Tahoe. And we have really found that that is the case, that visitors and residents want to have a part in restoring Lake Tahoe. Next slide, please. TRPA has 10 environmental thresholds that were developed in the 1980s. And TRPA is in the process of updating those thresholds. So we are measuring what matters. This year, we will be updating the biodiversity and recreation threshold. We are also improving the water quality monitoring that occurs in Lake Tahoe. UNR will increase monitoring of the lake's ecology, including a greater analysis of particles suspended in lake that reduce the lake clarity. And this is important because it's a complex system. And the more we know about what causes the clarity decline, the better we can adapt our management actions to directly impact that. As I mentioned, stewardship is also an important part of the EIP. The League to Save Lake Tahoe, or Keep Tahoe Blue, has been an incredible partner in this stewardship space. They have volunteer days. The picture at the top is a Tahoe Yellowcrest volunteer planting day that occurred just a few weeks ago. And Tahoe Yellowcrest is an endemic species that only grows on the shores of Lake Tahoe. So it's very important that we protect this plant and encourage the growth of it. And there's actually another planting happening right now out at Baldwin and Kiva Beach in South Lake Tahoe. Keep Tahoe Blue also facilitates Tahoe Blue Cruise, which allows groups and organizations to adopt a beach to clean up. And not only do they clean up the beach, but they also look at what the litter is, categorize it, weigh it to better inform what people are, littering, how they're trashing, so we can adapt our messaging to impact that more. One of the most popular beach cleanup days is the 5th of July after the 4th of July. And this is a picture of a huge turnout on the 5th of July at a popular beach. And it's become so unpopular that the past 2 years, there's been so many volunteers that there's like not enough trash for them to pick up. So it's been a hugely successful program. And then lastly, we want to be accountable and transparent to the public. And we have just this year launched the new Lake Tahoe branding and new EIP website, restoretahoe.org. This project links to the EIP tracker, so it is a great resource for all EIP projects. And if you haven't checked out Restore Tahoe, I highly encourage you to. It is a great website that explains the EIP in a really clear and concise way. Next slide. Here is a list of environmental improvement program projects that have been approved by this board over the last few years. I won't go through all of them, but what you can see at this table is most of these projects have either started construction or will be starting construction this year or next year. And most of them do take multiple years to complete. The one exception to this is the Kings Beach State Recreation Area Pier and Recreation Improvement Project. The governing board approved this project in January of 2019, and construction has not started yet. This project has been delayed for several reasons, one of them being funding, but they also are continuing to do geotechnical investigations to make sure that the location of the new pier is really the best new location and will have minimal environmental impacts. The permit that the board approved has expired. So when they come forward with the project, depending on what the scope of it is, we can do revise that permit, and we'll determine at that point if the project needs to come back to this board or not for another approval. Next slide, please. That kind of concludes the quick update on all of the EIP projects. Again, you can find more information about all of the projects on restoretahoe.org, which has information on the EIP program, and it also links to the EIP tracker that has more detailed information on all EIP projects. And with that, I will end and take any questions or comments that the board has on these projects.
Thanks, Shannon. That is truly an impressive list. Thank you. I was going to say, if only we were doing something. That's amazing. Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Again, this is information only. Belinda.
Sure, I'll just very quickly comment as the chair of that committee. It is just phenomenal work that's being done. And I think it's a true testament to the way that this agency and the partnership results in such phenomenal coordination. Being from LA, I'll admit, I talk about TRPA and the EIP process wherever I go in many policy committees, because it's such a shining example of what integrated partnership planning can do and how effective it can be when partners, regardless of, what their political orientation is or anything else, come together and agree on a set of goals and projects to implement those goals and prioritize them for funding every year. I mean, that is just, we are the envy sometimes of California because of all of our taxing authority that we've been able to get. But yet we have failed, just say it, we have failed in developing the types of partnerships and relationships that really generate, good integrated projects. So kudos to all the staff. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Thank you so much again. Thank you.
Madam Chair, actually, just comment. I really am also very impressed with the work that's happening. And I think it's great, and it's testament to the good work that's happening here. One of the things that does come to mind, and I don't want to get too far into this, but we have talked about the synthetic herbicides, and when you think about the cutthroat trout and some of what we're trying to improve, and if those synthetic herbicides were applied to those areas, what would that result in? And I know that it's not necessarily our wheelhouse, but we are looking at policies from the U.S. Forest Service that could be applied here within the basin, and what would that do? And I think that when we should start to take into consideration when we're trying to improve and restore, is that going to be something that we support in the basin for our overall overreaching goals on environmental improvement? And again, I'm not trying to say that we need to get into the business of trying to figure out that exact thing, but I also think that, look, when we're talking about restoring the cutthroat trout and those type of things, what would synthetic herbicides being used in these areas do to our overreaching goal? So I just think it's something to think about, but I really also I'm very proud of the work, and so thank you.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Paul Nielsen, TRPA. Just wanted to encourage those who are traveling Pioneer Trail recently, the work you're seeing out there, the Forest Service, the significant amount of work that's happening. It's transforming not just the look of the forest, but its resiliency to fire. And I think it really shows how overstocked our forests are. When you look at the sections of Pioneer Trail that have been treated now and those that are to be treated, you can see with the blue marks around it. It's a great place to compare and contrast what we're trying to get to in terms of a desired future condition for our forests.
And Madam Chair, if I may build on Mr. Nielsen's comments, this is Julie Reagan, TRPA's Executive Director. I also want to point to that example because it's also prescribed burning in an evacuation corridor. And so it's important to notice, and wonderful presentation, Shannon. You did a great job on that. It's important to stress the multiple benefits of these projects. We have 10 threshold categories, as Shannon indicated, and we're also getting public health and safety benefits from the forest health projects as well. So you can see the broadcast burn right up to the roadway, and you can see the thinning all happening, getting wildlife benefits and habitat and watershed benefits as well. Just wanted to address Mayor Bass's comment, Madam Chair. I'll skip ahead to one item I won't have to mention at my executive director report. Our chair of our EIP committee, Member Faustinos, has kindly agreed for the EIP committee to take up the issue of herbicides and glyphosate in the purview of that committee, since the question has arisen out of a forest health EIP project, the Caldor restoration. So next month in August, we'll be agendizing a discussion. We've been coordinating with the Forest Service on that discussion, and we'll bring an item for the EIP committee. So those of you members who may not serve on that committee, you're absolutely welcome to participate, to join that committee, and we'll be making sure the public is aware of that as well.
Thank you, Julie. All right, moving on then, looking around, moving on to agenda item 7C, which is the update on the 30th annual Lake Tahoe Summit, found on page 111. Devin, whenever you're ready, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Devin Middlebrook, TRPA Government Affairs Manager for the record, here to talk to you about the exciting 30th anniversary of the Tahoe Summit this year. While I did not personally attend the first Tahoe Summit, I was an 8-year-old boy and have fond memories of the presidential helicopter flying overhead when I was out with my parents in town one day. So I do remember the activities around the first summit. Next slide. So we are going to be celebrating on the shores of Lake Tahoe at Sand Harbor State Park in Nevada on Wednesday, August 19th. The main program is 10 a.m. to noon, and our esteemed host this year is U.S. Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada. All of the summit information and program and all of that will be posted to tahoesummit.org. I'll loop back around to the details of this year's event, but with the next slide. I want to just take a step back in history, especially for some of our newer board members. Back in the 1990s, Tahoe's waters were losing their famed clarity at an average rate of nearly a foot per year. In addition, urban centers were decaying and the overstocked forest posed profound fire threat. Many worried that the landmark national treasure of Lake Tahoe was at a worrying tipping point. In 1997, U.S. Senators Harry Reid of Nevada and Dianne Feinstein of California brought President Bill Clinton, Vice President Al Gore, and top cabinet officials to Tahoe for the inaugural Lake Tahoe Summit, then called the 1997 Presidential Forum. At this summit, federal, state, and local leaders unveiled the multi-jurisdictional and collaborative plan to save Lake Tahoe, named the Environmental Improvement Program, or EIP, and you just saw all of the great success we're having with that program in the last presentation. And really 30 years later, the EIP remains one of the greatest landscape conservation partnerships in the nation, with more than 80 partners encompassing all government sectors and jurisdictions, the private sector, science community, and Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California. Today, the Tahoe Summit continues to play a critical role in fostering bipartisan collaboration on the current priorities of the EIP and securing funding for projects aimed at protecting the lake's ecosystem and ensuring the region's long-term sustainability. I just want to pause for a minute and just, we've been doing a lot of history and research and just read off the esteemed list of guests that joined us at the first summit. We had Tribal Chairman Brian Wallace from the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California, obviously President Clinton and Vice President Al Gore. We had U.S. Secretary of Transportation Rodney Slater and his Deputy Secretary Mort Downey, U.S. EPA Administrator Carol Browner, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman and Deputy Secretary Rich Rumminger, U.S. Secretary of the Interior Bruce Babbitt and Deputy Secretary John Garamendi, Assistant Secretary of the Army Civil Works John Zersky, Chair of the Council of Environmental Quality Kate McGinty, U.S. Senators from Nevada Harry Reid and Richard Bryan, California Senators Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer, Nevada Congressman Jim Gibbons and John Ensign, and U.S. Representatives John Doolittle, Dick Fazio, and George Miller, in addition to Nevada Governor Bob Miller, California Governor Pete Wilson, California Lieutenant Governor Gray Davis, and Attorney General of Nevada Frankie Sue Del Papa. So you can see that guest list is quite impressive. And I don't think any of those people are all allowed to be in one location at the same time anymore. So it was really a momentous occasion. Good point. Next slide. But this really wasn't just an event and a photo opportunity. And we said, hey, great job. We got the president here. Let's move on. But really, the key outcome of this first summit in 1997 at the culmination of the event was signing of multiple implementation agreements and memorandums of understanding between federal agencies, state agencies, TRPA, the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California, and local governments. And those implementation agreements laid the framework and the groundwork for the Lake Tahoe Environmental Improvement Program. So born out of that 97 summit was the EIP. And then a few short years later in 2000, the first Lake Tahoe Restoration Act passed, authorizing $300 million and the federal share of investment in Lake Tahoe, the EIP, and protecting our clarity, which, as we all know, is matched many times over by state, local, private, nonprofit funds. And most importantly, led to the creation of Team Tahoe. And you heard about all the great work Team Tahoe is doing on the ground this year in the last presentation. Next slide. And really just want to share this partnerships map and a reminder of who Team Tahoe is with our new EIP branding and Team Tahoe badge. But the whole gamut of acronyms in federal, state, local, regional, Washoe Tribe, private entities, really everyone is involved in protecting Tahoe. And as governing board members and members of the community that care about Tahoe, you are also all members of Team Tahoe. So thanks for being on the team. Next slide. Getting back to this year's summit, again, we'll be gathering at Sand Harbor State Park on Wednesday, August 19th. Check-in for the event opens at 8:30 and the main program is from 10 a.m. to noon. We have had a great demand for the event. People love coming to the summit, so public tickets are already sold out. Each one of you board members have been registered for the event, so hopefully you're all able to attend. Our keynote speaker is still to be announced. And then Thea Schwartz from our team at TRPA here is organizing the environmental booth fair. So we'll have more than 50 Team Tahoe members, organizations, nonprofits, sharing all of the great work that they do year round in Tahoe at this event. And it'll be very exciting. And the booth fair will go on at the beginning of the summit before the program and then continue till 2 p.m. so people can hang out and enjoy the beautiful weather at Tahoe and enjoy the post-summit buzz. Next slide. I also want to mention, as part of the 30th anniversary campaign, we're doing lots of exciting stuff and really promoting the event. So just yesterday, we launched the 30 Years of the Tahoe Summit social media campaign. So you can follow along on your favorite social media platform at hashtag 30 Years of the Tahoe Summit or through the TRPA accounts. And each year we'll follow through each day we'll follow a new year in our 30-year history and highlight one of the EIP projects, programs, or major accomplishments that made the Tahoe Summit and our partnership what it is today. So lots of great history and background and things to follow along. So hopefully you all tune in for that campaign. We're also working on a special edition of Tahoe in Depth, which will come out before the summit and really dive deep into the history of the partnership, the event, and what it has accomplished over the years. So really exciting to have that going on. And just thanks for all of our partners and Thea here at TRPA for putting that together. Next slide. Ahead of the summit each year, we also host a virtual briefing for our delegation staff and the folks that we work with both federally and in the states so they can know what's going on in Tahoe ahead of the summit and prepare for the event. So this year it was a top 5 in Tahoe for 2026. We had 63 folks tune in for that webinar, and the recording is posted online at that link if you all want to tune in and check it out. It was moderated by Kim Carringer here at TRPA, and it's about 24 minutes and really is a high-level overview of everything going on in Tahoe. If you can actually truly cover everything in 24 minutes, Kim did a great job. Next slide. And then that brings us to our action item today. As we were going through all of the archives around the Tahoe Summit and looking through all the old materials from 1997, we found this old proclamation. I've got it on the slide here and actually in person as a prop from the city of South Lake Tahoe, welcoming President Clinton and Vice President Al Gore to Tahoe for that first event and committing the city to being part of the partnership that became the EIP. So this inspired us, and we have been requesting from various partners 30th anniversary resolutions, really just, again, another piece to celebrate. So in addition to the request for this board today, we will have requested and will most likely be receiving resolutions from both states' governors, federal congressional record, all of our local jurisdiction partners, thank you representatives on this board, will be adopting resolutions. And then this board, and then Nevada governors and both Nevada, California governors and both states legislatures as well. So we'll have the whole gamut of resolutions. There's just another tactic to build excitement for the upcoming event. So before I request the motion that's on the screen, I just want to turn it to our Executive Director, Julie Reagan, to add anything that I may have missed.
Thank you, Devin. Excellent presentation. Julie Reagan here, TRPA Executive Director. You missed nothing. I just wanted to close out to say, I think there are a handful of us in the room that were at the 97 summit. There are fewer and further between. Thanks for telling us all you were 8 years old. I was barely hanging on to my 20s at that point. I was not quite yet 30 years old, but just a fun fact, when we had that summit, it wasn't just one day. The summit has evolved over 30 years into one day. We have tours and educational tours that, as Devin mentioned, that lead up to the summit. We have other events to coincide with the summit, but the very first summit was a series of meetings. It was maybe 3 or 4 days, working meetings, roundtable discussions that led to those policy outcomes, which was tremendous. And then it still haunts me that my job was to take Cindy Gustafson's picture when she shook Al Gore's hand, and I had a new camera and her eyes were closed. It still haunts me, Cindy. You know, it really was, it was eyes closed and the camera wasn't right. And I only got there because it was a very hot ticket, just as it is this year, which is exciting to hear. It's wonderful to hear so much momentum building and the excitement for people to attend, because you really couldn't get a ticket. The Incline Hyatt for the actual moment when there was a rope line, when you could meet the president and the vice president, was very hard to get. So being creative at the time, I worked at the South Tahoe Public Utility District. And I went to my media friends with the Tahoe Mountain News and said, if I cover this as a member of the media, can I get in? And they said, you bet. So I got to write a column and I got to go and to experience that. And it truly has shaped my tenure in the basin and my commitment to collaboration and leadership with this incredible partnership that's just beyond our wildest imagination of where we could be today. But yet the challenges are so great. I think what we hope at this summit is to celebrate those 30 years of summits, which in and of itself, to maintain that over 30 years is an enormous accomplishment, and the outcomes that we're driving from that, but also to recognize the great challenges that we have and that the work is not done and that we have to recommit and reinvest. So with that, I just thank you and thank the board for your excitement to join us. We do have Team Tahoe stickers. So we want to see you representing on your water bottles and your notebooks at the next board meeting. We'll make sure you get them. Thanks, Devin. Good job.
Thank you. Any questions or comments before we go to the motion, guys?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add that I was on the transportation panel the day before. And my fondest memory is getting Al Gore to laugh when I said we all needed to come in by helicopter and avoid our automobiles. But we didn't have the same opportunity that he did, so.
Questions or comments? Otherwise, I am looking for the motion on the screen.
I'd be pleased to make that motion.
All right. So we have the motion to adopt the Tahoe Summit 30th Anniversary Resolution as shown in attachment A. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Alding?
Yes.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Conrad Seda?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrow?
Yes.
Ms. Faustinos?
Yes.
Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson?
Yes.
Mr. Keycapper?
Yes.
Mr. Henigman?
Yes.
Mr. Tolbert? Ms. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Loomer?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Thanks again, Devin.
Thank you and see you in August.
All right. That brings us to agenda item 7D, which is the 2026 Transportation and Sustainable Communities Performance and Recommendations Report. Information on this item can be found on page 117. And I am turning it over to Dan when he's ready.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Sorry, I'm not as tall as Devin. Dan Segan, TRPA, and it's my pleasure to present to you on item 7D on our agenda. It starts at 117 of your packet, and that is the 2026 Transportation and Sustainability or Sustainable Communities Performance and Recommendations Report. Next slide, please. Most of you will probably refer to this as the VMT item, especially if you have a long history with the board. And that's because the item itself and the report is rooted in our regional plan and the change to one of our threshold standards related to VMT. As most of you know, VMT is vehicle miles traveled, and the agency has a long history of trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled. In 2021, we updated that standard to modernize it, to make it a standard to reduce the amount that all of us in our daily lives in Tahoe, whether we are visitors, workers, or residents, drive in each day. And we established a new ambitious goal for ourselves to achieve by 2045, excuse me. As part of that, we didn't just want to set it and forget it. So the board adopted an adaptive management framework that can be found in DP5 of our regional plan. And there are 3 core parts of that adaptive management framework. The board wanted independent guidance as we made these decisions. They wanted established milestones along the way, so we weren't just waking up in 2044 and wondering how we're doing on our progress towards a 2045 goal. And we wanted triggered responses, or things that would go into place if we started to fall behind on what we were trying to achieve. Next slide, please. So the first part of that, independent guidance, the board formed and named the Transportation Performance Technical Advisory Committee, otherwise known as the TPTAC. It's a 15-member advisory group. You can see the membership on the screen. I won't read it to you. The board approved that membership in March of 2022, and it approved the committee's charter in September of that same year. Next slide, please. That committee has its core responsibility is providing biannual reports. So every 2 years, it provides this board with a performance and recommendations report. And the key part of that report, and I'll go over the report in a bit more detail in a moment, is it evaluates how we're doing on a series of metrics and says, are we doing well or are we not doing well? And if we are not doing well on those metrics, it provides recommendations on how to improve our performance. And if we're doing well, it says, hey, we're doing well here. Next slide, please. So the 2026 reporting cycle, some of you may remember the 2024 report fondly. I think it was a page turner, is our second in the edition here. And there's 3 purposes of this report. So we evaluate the status of our metrics, we evaluate progress towards our milestones, and then the group provides recommendations on both. In this reporting cycle, the Technical Advisory Committee held 2 publicly noticed meetings in April and May of this year. And you can listen to those meetings if you're interested on our website. Next slide, please. The metrics framework that the advisory committee produced itself and then brought to the Transportation Committee in April of 2023 includes 3 core areas and metrics within each of those. So the committee evaluates the performance of our transit system, of our active transportation network, that's biking and walking, and finally of our automobile. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to go over every part of the report for you. It's in your packet and has been transmitted to you separately. But I want to provide you with some high-level overview of what we're seeing in each of those categories. So the first is total ridership within our transit program. And this is transit all around our region. And what's most notable here is you can see that big dip associated with COVID. And then you can see the post-COVID recovery and this improved trajectory. And what we're seeing is very encouraging that from those lows of COVID, we've returned to pre-COVID ridership levels and are now exceeding those, which is very encouraging. Next slide, please. Bike and ped facilities. So there are 2 parts of this slide. On the left-hand side of your screen is the miles of bike path that we've constructed in any given year. And you can see we're making steady progress as we expand the bike and pedestrian pathways of the region. The next, of the right-hand side of the slide, is from our count stations along those bike paths. And here you'll see the opposite of transit ridership, so that you see the 2020 spike, extremely high levels of bike and ped activity during that COVID period that have gone down slightly since, but have overall remained relatively constant. And we see high levels of activity on those facilities. Next slide, please. The third and final metric I'll highlight is travel times. So many of you know we currently measure
congestion or travel times on 12 segments within our region. We measure both the average travel time within each of those segments, as well as the slowest period of travel. That's the 5% slowest trips. And the key to this slide is green is good. That means you're flying through that little piece of the corridor. Red is bad, and the darker red is even worse. And what's really noticeable when you look at this slide is you can see 2023. And 2023 stands out as just about the worst travel times in our region in the recorded period. And if you remember 2023, that was the big winter of 23. And all of the really slow travel times are associated with storm slowdowns. Every other red period here in any of the segments is associated with construction. And 23 is our one constant. And you can see that after the big winter, we generally return to the more normal travel times and flow within each of those corridors. Next slide, please. So the second part of this report, the first part was metrics. The second part is the assessment of our milestones, the progress mileposts that we established for ourselves in 2021. There were 3 milestones that were to be assessed by the Technical Advisory Committee within this report. The first 2 related to regional revenue as part of DP 5.4. And the second or the third related to VMT per capita. And the structure of these milestones follows a framework of when we established this new goal, we were worried about funding it. So we established funding goals. But ultimately, what we really care about is reducing VMT per capita. And so there's milestones for the actual reduction of VMT per capita, the thing that we care about most at the end of the day. Next slide, please. So I'll walk through each of the 3 assessments for you. So the first was DP54A, and you can see the text of the regional plan on the screen there. And the text states that by the end of 2021, we will have a proposal for dedicated sources of transportation funding endorsed and supported by the bi-state transportation consultation, and then submitted to the legislatures of the 2 states, Nevada and California. So if you put yourself back in early 2021 or 2020 when we were writing this policy, there was a $20 million gap in our regional transportation plan, an annual gap. And the 2 states, CNRA and DCNR, stepped up to lead this bi-state consultation to find collaborative solutions and develop a proposal to fill that gap and fully fund the regional transportation plan. So our first milestone here was, did they actually establish that plan? As many of you know, they did establish that plan in 2022. It was signed, you can see the signatories of the director and the secretary on that document there, and then presented at the summit in 2022, and subsequently presented or transmitted to the 2 legislatures. So the committee found that the milestone had been achieved, but after the deadline that was established within the regional plan policy. Next slide, please. The second part of that milestone, so the first part of the revenue milestone is we need to develop this proposal or plan. The second part is we actually need to implement that plan, and we need to start collecting additional revenue. So the 777 funding framework required that each of the different entities, so now we're talking about federal, state and local, and private sector, need to contribute an additional 7 million more. So it fundamentally divided up the responsibility for filling this funding gap and asked each of the partners to bring a little bit more to the table. And what you'll see there on the bottom of the screen, so we have completed 3 years of implementation of 777. And we have exceeded the revenue target in each of those 3 years. So the total goal for the 3 years would be $63 million of revenue. To date, we've collected $82 million in revenue above and beyond the forecast of the regional transportation plan. And there's a detailed accounting for that within your packet. So the committee, the technical advisory committee suggested that the revenue commencement part of this milestone had also been achieved. Next slide, please. The third and final milestone was the first of our VMT per capita reduction milestones. And it's referred to as the 2024 milestone, although it actually captures VMT between 2020 and 2022. That's because of a reporting lag from the state agencies that provide us the VMT data. So we've specifically established these milestones so that they align with when VMT numbers from the two states are released. So VMT per capita within that period was 10.95 relative to our target reduction for that period. So that means every person within our region produces about 11 miles of VMT a day. Our target was that they would produce 12.38. So we are well ahead of that target. Although in committee discussion, we've talked about that period still includes the COVID impact and reduced vehicle volumes during COVID. So I think it's cautious optimism with which you should be looking at that. But the committee did assess that the milestone, we had achieved the milestone. Next slide, please. So the third and final part of the report is providing recommendations to this body and to the Tahoe Transportation District. The recommendations in the report are divided into 4 different sections, one for each mode of transit. A mode is how you get around, or a mode is walking or using transit or biking. So some of the recommendations related to multimodal, meaning they apply to all of our modes or would help us improve all modes. And again, I won't read all of these, but one of the recommendations there was to evaluate propensity, which propensity is like your likeliness to use transit or bike and ped facilities, and that we should do a better job of figuring out who the people are that are most likely to use and what types of services would best encourage people to use those services that we're offering. In transit, there continues to be a focus on securing flexible operating dollars for operators, on better integration between our fixed routes and our micro transit routes, so that the two support each other rather than compete with each other. Next slide, please. In the active transportation space and the auto transportation and the auto space, the recommendations largely followed the recommendations from the prior year report. Continue to perform maintenance on our bike paths, make sure that our bike paths are cleared in the winter so that people that rely on them to get to work and to do their activities can get there. To improve wayfinding so that it's easier to navigate and understand how you go in between modes. For the auto mode, there's a continued focus on providing travelers with information so that they can make better decisions. When parking lots are full, we want them to know in advance so they're not making trips that frustrate them and cause congestion on our roadways. Next slide, please. So I include this slide not just to remind those of you that didn't know that I did have dark hair once, and not just because I included it in many of the early VMT slides, but also to remind you that I'm not an elephant. That's me with a baby elephant. And if you are all familiar with elephant culture, you know that elephants are incredible in the way that they communicate with each other and pass down knowledge from generation to generation. They have complex rituals whereby they mourn their dead. They can find food and water during times of drought, even though they've never visited those areas, because it's been passed down from generation to generation. I'm not an elephant, and I don't remember all the discussions we had in 2020 and 2021 when we developed it. But I do know that we documented all of that, and a prior board documented all of that for you and provided the specific way in which we're supposed to handle many of the challenging questions that you're being asked to wrestle with today and that were brought up by our partners in their letters and their comments. And so I wanted to take a brief moment to talk about the process with which we've brought this forward and how that aligns with the words within our regional plan that guide how we approach these types of issues. So DP 5.2 specifically says that the advisory body will provide an assessment of status relative to these milestones in 5.4 and 5.5. The board didn't advocate the responsibility to make that decision, but it asked for an advisory body to provide it independent guidance while reserving the ability to make a different decision if it so choose. DP 5.2 goes on to say that the board will review the report within 90 days of issuance. That's part of the reason why we're here today. The report was issued to you and transmitted to you. At the last meeting, members expressed interest in discussing in greater detail, and so we're having the meeting here today. It goes on to say that if after discussion the board disagrees with the findings of the report, it can provide a written justification for why it's doing something else or why it disagrees. So we've got this formal process that we're following today, given to us within the regional plan. And then finally, we've been asked about the structure and why no motion is required if there is not disagreement with the findings of the report. And that relates to DP 5.6, which says, and that's the last part on your screen today. And if you go down, so supplemental compliance measures, that's a regional plan term of art for basically changes in policy that would be implemented if we weren't on track. And basically DP 5.6 lists those supplemental compliance measures, changes in how our land use policy works, and says they shall automatically go into effect if it is found that the milestones in 5.6 and 5.4 have not been attained. So there is not a requirement that there is affirmative vote that they have been attained. Rather, the words of the regional plan suggest that if the board believes the milestones have not been attained, we vote that they have not been attained, and then the supplemental compliance measures automatically go into effect. There is no additional action required by this board to make those supplemental compliance measures go into effect. They simply go into effect if and when the board finds that the milestones established here have not been attained. Next slide, please. And I promise this is my last slide. And then I will turn it over to you for questions. So the board has two options before it today. So the first is a no action option, which is consistent with staff recommendations and the recommendation of the Independent Advisory Council. And the no action is required if the board agrees with the findings and recommendations of the report. The second option the board has is if the board does not agree and wants to pursue an alternative policy relative to any of the recommendations or findings in the report, the board has the opportunity to direct staff to prepare a written justification for why it does not agree with the findings of the report. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. I think we'll
Thank
start
you.
with questions or comments. Questions or comments from the board. Start this way, Shelley.
Thank you. So there seems to be a disagreement about the meaning of the word ongoing. It can be interpreted to mean per year, whereas as years progress, per year, we meet the funding obligation of the 777 regional funding framework, or it could be interpreted to mean that the ongoing implies that the funding will be indefinite, in perpetuity, which in our current fiscal climate would be, in my estimation, an unreasonable interpretation of that word. And again, I don't know, I haven't gone back and read the minutes and reviewed all of the conversations that preceded the adoption of this. But what is staff's interpretation, Dan, of meaning of the term ongoing as it applies to the funding plan?
Thanks, Shelley. Dan Segan again. Can I maybe start at a bit higher level, not to avoid your question, but to give more context? So the policies within this were the subject of robust negotiation with valued partners, both of which, specifically the California Attorney General's Office and the League to Save Lake Tahoe, both of which provided, I would say, invaluable input into this policy and improved it immensely. I think the fundamental difference right now, and when we were preparing for it earlier this week, can be traced back to a severability between the two parts of the funding policy. And it actually became, I think, clear to me where we weren't seeing eye to eye when I was reading through past letters from the Attorney General's office. And in one particular letter, I'm pulling up my notes, November 18th, 25. They wrote, the success of a separate and distinct funding effort, referred to as the 777 initiative. And I think we as staff have never, we're not aware of two funding efforts. We're only aware of a single funding effort being led by the bi-state consultation. And that's the effort led in DP 4A. And that was what led to the 777 initiative and what was subsequently implemented. So I think we have this, and you could say maybe the words were not codified well enough, and we've added additional language afterwards or different expectations afterwards. But fundamentally, there were expectations by partners that were not codified within the language of the regional plan that continue to, I think, persist today and maybe reflect many of our wider hopes and dreams for transportation funding. They're not unrealistic expectations. They're consistent with many of the conversations of the time, but they were not codified within our regional plan because we did not have that agreed upon proposal by the two states. So if you're putting yourself back in that time frame, because I think you probably remember it as well as any of us, there were a lot of individuals who aspired and hoped that we may have a basin entry fee that would be a silver bullet that would solve many of our funding problems. And the way I think about that is, and probably was my own aspiration in 2021, is that I wished my last presentation to you on VMT or transportation funding was in 2021. And we had solved the problem and money was flowing in the door and everything was working well. And I think instead, we have a commitment and dedication of a number of partners to continue to work to fill that gap. And they have been successful thus far, and they continue to work at that. But that's not as easy as winning the lottery. That's work every day. And many of you continue to be involved in that work, and I'm sure all of you would wish that we had already solved it and we didn't need to continue to work at it.
And could you remind us what the supplemental compliance measures are that would be implemented if it's found that we did not meet our funding requirements?
So the supplemental compliance measures are listed in DP 5.6, and they would increase the standard of significance for basically residential and tourist projects to no net VMT for projects that were above the screening level. So we have a two-tiered evaluation system for transportation projects that basically allows most smaller projects to proceed forward with paying a simple fee, and then establishes a different higher bar, greater requirements, if you will, for larger projects to ensure that they're consistent with our long-term goals of reducing VMT per capita.
Was there also an exemption for public service projects?
There's not an exemption for public service. There is an exemption for affordable housing.
Okay, not for projects that address public safety issues, though.
No.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Going this way, Ms. Gustafson.
Yes. Thank you. And Dan, I thought you did a very diplomatic recap of a lot of energy. I was fortunate to serve on that bi-state, was that right? Yeah, compact. Just all those discussions. And, you know, clearly I've been a long time supporter of getting to a basin entry fee. When the two governors of both states tell you no, then you convene a group and you try to go at it in another way to solve the problem, which is what we did. And we remain committed. And I would say, at least on behalf of myself, I continue to advocate in California with our elected officials, because I think ultimately we can't deal with the numbers of folks that are coming to our area just on the backs of those of us who live here. And that's so much of our transportation funding is per capita or based on local revenues. So we've gone above and beyond that at the local level, and I am very committed, and I hope that the parties that write comment letters are also doing that and advocating to solve the larger problem, because we need to. And as California and Nevada are looking at how they do road user fees for in replacement of gas tax revenues, I think we have opportunities, but we have to stay engaged as a partnership to do that. And we can remain committed as a governing board, as individual members, but we need our partners outside to stay with us in this and not ignore, for Placer County, we eliminated the sunset on our transient occupancy tax with the agreement that the funds would go to transportation and housing only. I mean, that was a huge commitment from our business community, who had had a routine sunset on that tax that had to come up for renewal, so that those paying in felt that they had some accountability from government. We were able to succeed with that. So, yeah, I so strongly support the work, the hard work we did in that committee to get to the 777 plan. And the biggest challenge I see is with all of our employees leaving the basin every day, going to and from the basin, we have got to find ways to transport those employees. So we've made great strides in that as well, with the business community going above and beyond to running van shuttles down to Reno to bring people up to the lake to work. So I don't even think we're capturing all the efforts that are going on from the private sector to try to solve these issues as well. And I'm really so thankful for the hard work it took, Dan, and how you articulated this, because it's much better. Your memory is much better than mine, because you're also much younger. And I just think it's the most critical issue that I see us facing from the communities, from my constituents who just really don't want anyone else here, and don't want any more traffic, because traffic represents visitors and they just want the basin to themselves. And I tell them, we don't own Lake Tahoe. We own our property, and please work with us to solve those issues. And I don't think everyone recognizes how hard we do work to try to get to a larger funding stream at the state level and at the federal level. And it's imperative we do that, because we're not going to solve this issue. As I watch Northern Nevada and Northern California grow, those people and climate change, people are coming to the basin. We see the numbers. When it is extremely hot and dry, they're coming here to recreate and to find, escape from those temperatures. So we need them. We need to be able to capture some revenue from those day use areas as well. Anyway, thank you.
Linda?
Yeah, just real quickly, I ditto everything Cindy said, so eloquently. I'm not going to try to repeat that. I was also in a lot of those discussions and remembered the discussions about, how can we have a basin fee and the difficulties that there are in doing that. And I just want to say that even when you do it, as we did in LA County, you're not going to get everything you need. I mean, they're just, the financial need is so, extraordinary that even with a fairly large tax, we're facing, things that, hey, it was get ready for the Olympics, get ready for the World Cup. And it's been a struggle. And so, a fee or some kind of taxes, not going to be, frankly, the answer to, it would help, obviously, but it's not going to really be able to address everything. And I just, really applaud our local government for all that they're doing. I mean, yeah, Brooke, your, shuttle that you were able to, I mean, everybody is pitching in to try to get this done. And it's just a difficult task. I mean, I was say yesterday when I was, had the fortune of being able to be here for the afternoon, getting rerouted by Google Maps around the traffic. You feel for the local residents that are being impacted by, people coming down, residential streets. So again, this is a difficult task, but I really have to give a big shout out to everyone that works every day on getting these things done. Thank you.
Mr. Keycover.
Dan, I had thought that I had heard a commenter suggest that there had been a shift from calculating VMT on a total basis to a per capita basis. Did I mishear that? Is that accurate? What's the history on that?
That's 100% accurate. So we actually calculate both now. So we had a 1981 threshold for VMT that measured just the absolute amount of VMT. That when we were doing the process, as part of the threshold update process, we reviewed the scientific basis for that standard. It was based in nitrogen loading to the lake. So at the time that the standard was adopted, cars produced roughly 98% more nitrogen than they do today. And the thought was that one of the major sources of nitrogen was nitrogen enrichment through atmospheric deposition to our lake. And clearly that concern fundamentally changes when cars are no longer releasing as much nitrogen. And we had a number of conversations at the time about, do we still care about VMT? And if so, why? And part of those conversations, we started looking back at the old VMT standard. And one of the things that became apparent was when times were booming, we were above the standard. And when the economy went down, we went back into a compliance with the standard. And you had this sort of seesaw that reflected economic conditions rather than the impact of our transportation system. And so part of the discussion that we had at the time was, how do you better align the measure VMT, or here VMT per capita, with the things that you're trying to achieve in your transportation system? And so if our goal is to not have people like Belinda being rerouted and driving 1 million miles trying to get somewhere, but rather providing her with alternatives to walk, bike, or take the bus somewhere, how do you better reflect that? And there was a growing number of jurisdictions around the country, really around the world, that were looking to VMT per capita as a way to measure your efficiency of getting people out of their cars, which is also a compact mandate.
So originally VMT was more of a lake clarity threshold, and it became a transportation threshold, and we just decided to change it.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Continuing around. No, okay.
Not a question in particular, but I just want to say thank you to Dan for making himself available to answer your questions as I was en route to the airport. So thank you for the staff for always being available with information. I just want to applaud the efforts that everybody's making in terms of the shuttles, as Brooke has led the charge as well, and being able to see all the resources, everybody come together as a community. I know how difficult it is for local communities to deal with the influx of people. As being someone from Vegas, when it is 110 degrees, I was very excited to come to Tahoe today. So I'm definitely in agreement, and from the Secretary of State's office, happy to help in any way we can. And again, thank you for making yourself available and staff available with information.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I'm gonna look online, but I can actually see you all now. So if you guys could do me a favor, I said shout at me before, but maybe stop shouting at me, not that you were, and click your raise hand if you want to. I see Vince is up first.
Thanks, Haley. Hey, I just wanted to say, I think that we need to go with the staff recommendation today and move beyond this. We've done a lot of great work, but I don't think any of us think that we're done with this, and we need to come up with a good long-term strategy for consistent funding for transportation, especially operating costs, which are much harder to fund. So we are going to keep working on this. I think we need to commit to keeping working on this and finding those longer term, more stable sources of funding going ahead. And the staff they're good at turning over those rocks and, and finding all the little pots of money that are hiding underneath them. And I think we just have to make sure, keep the pressure on so that we do this over time. Because as Gavin noted, we'll be off to other things soon too. We're going to be working on housing. We're going to be working on golden mussels. We've got a lot of stuff going on up here, but we have to keep the pressure on this. But thank you, Dan and staff, for untangling this for us, because it wasn't it's complicated and unclear. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Vince. We'll do Cody, Alexis, and then Alex.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, thank you, Dan, for the very in-depth report. For me, I definitely think that, we have done a lot since my time serving publicly, almost 8 years. Where we've come from then to now with transit on the South Shore is phenomenal. Tomorrow we cut the ribbon for Lake Link for full expansion through the whole city. And it's really been a transformation, and it's really a testament to like so much partnership and a lot of energy from all of us. So it's great. And but I think that there is some merit in the fact that we do still need to have sustainable funding. And to me, it's always transit operations. Like we're always kind of piecemealing how we're going to keep getting it done. And I know the North Shore struggles at the same level. And, I don't want to invalidate the work we're doing or trigger these things, but I just don't understand why the report can't outline that we do need sustainable funding. We are really in a place that the states need to recognize that it doesn't exist. I mean, in California, we have TDA funds coming out of our gas tax, and that's pretty sustainable, and we know that's going to continue. We've seen SB 125 funds come out of California, which have been very supportive of these efforts, but that's limited funds. And we need to, I've continued, and I know there's been real effort for Nevada to try to find that type of sustainable funding that can go to transit operations year to year, but it does not exist. And when we started 777, I was a big part of that process at the TTD board. We really talked about the 7% for local, trying to create basin entry fee. Let's talk even about like using TOT from locals. And we really couldn't get there. And what we did is we used our existing transit capital or transportation capital projects to fulfill our 7, part of the local 7 match. And so I don't think we should forget that. I think it should be in the report that we do need to find the sustainable funding. And in my mind, it's transit operations that we kind of are continuing to always have to piecemeal together. But hats off to all of you for doing it, because we are still making it happen, and it has been a great change here in the basin and on the South Shore. But we still have a ways to go, and that's going to be a forever thing. So thank you all.
Dan, hold up. Sorry, Alexis, 1 second. Dan.
I just wanted to, Cody, if you look at page 43 of the report, it echoes exactly the sentiment that you just said. And I want to sort of disentangle two different things that the report does. One is the assessment of the milestones established in the regional plan, and the second is other recommendations. And one of the report's resounding recommendations in the transit space was that we continue to explore strategies to augment transit operating dollars in particular, because I think a number of people within that technical advisory group had the same sentiment that you have, that we're doing really well on capital projects, and it is those operating and maintenance dollars that we should really be focusing our efforts on as we go forward. So that is included in the report's recommendations.
Great. Thank you, Dan. And, one last thing I'll just say is that I think it would be great for us to also be putting in the report, like, what are the future things and things that, I always bring up the gondola, but those type of things that are going to transform us and make it sustainable as a system that we can look forward to in a long-term plan and a 25-year vision. But anyways, a great report. Thank you, Dan. And yeah, great work.
Alexis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the report today. And I think that Vince really said it beautifully about how I think the staff have done a great job. We need to move forward with their recommendation and also, keep the pressure on. And I just want to commit from Washoe County, our priority as a board, the county commissioners, is finding sustainable transportation funding for Tahoe. There's 3 different bills being run potentially that could help with this. So this is something that's a big priority for my county, and I just wanted to put that commitment on the record, and we'll see what happens during the session, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Alexis. Alex?
So maybe just starting with a question, you mentioned in the report changing kind of some of the data that the baseline's based on. How is that going to affect our ability to measure progress if, like, part of the way through we're changing the data?
So there's actually 2 parts to this recommendation within the report. And it's one of the ones I highlighted on the screen. The report also recommended that we do it in the 2024 report. And admittedly, we have not done it yet. So when you see the evaluation of progress from the last one, it says incomplete. So the question relates to VMT per capita. The per capita within Tahoe includes all travelers within our region. So while most jurisdictions just use their local population, we wanted ours to include everyone that's within the region during that day. So it's fairly complex to actually estimate how many people are in the region on any individual day. And we've experimented with big data to do so. We worked with the Tahoe Science Advisory Council to develop the input that's used now, which is called the Tahoe Effective Population Model. And one of the report's recommendations, I apologize, this is a little bit nuanced, but the report's recommendation is to change from using Streetlight to count traffic volumes within our region. So Streetlight is a big data platform that uses your cell phone, connected autos, et cetera, to estimate volumes. And so it's to change from using volumes estimated by this big data source to actual DOT volumes. So the recommendation was rooted it's in one of the appendices, but Streetlight basically changed its algorithms that estimate volume such that the 2018 volume estimates from the platform are no longer comparable to the 2025 or 2024 volumes. And so our ability to track progress is actually rooted in making this change to DOT volumes, which it'll be a slower reporting cycle because the DOT volumes are released at a slower pace. Streetlight, we're getting volumes a month or 2 ago for what their estimate is. So it'll slightly slow down, but the benefit of that sort of slower process is better consistency within our tracking. So the actual progress we're reporting to you is real rather than an artifact of a data source.
Great. And then, I appreciate the discussion. Hearing from all the other board members, I think Board Member Aldean opened it up well by saying that definitely seems like there's confusion as to whether or not we've met the ongoing funding requirement, and hearing the other board members speak to like the efforts that are underway and, you know, the aspirations that we have. Whether or not we've met it or not seems to be an open discussion. And I do think that's something that the board should be making a finding on. I know there's the appendix in the advisory committee report that states that we have met it. I think it's within the board's purview to be making that decision, and we should be making that clear. And, you know, we have letters from both the League to Save Lake Tahoe and the Attorney General's office asking us to do this. They are partners that we were, you know, negotiating in good faith with for years. And I think we definitely owe them, you know, the board being accountable to that. And if the decision is, hey, we've done it, like check the box, ongoing funding's been completed, you know, I think that's up to the board, but I do think that is something that we should be taking action on. And this is something I think the Transportation Committee is well suited to be digging into, and then coming back to the board and reporting back on. But I think there's more work that needs to be done here before we just move forward and say that by taking no action, we're just agreeing with what's in the appendix.
Dan Segan again. So the last report, the board took no action on, and I think the suggestion actually has two parts that you're making, because the action required or the action currently established within the regional plan is that the board would make a finding if they are not attained. And so I think the recommendation really, both in the comment letters and in the suggestion, is that we should modify the regional plan to require affirmative board action rather than not just action if it's not attained. Is that's the suggestion is for a regional plan modification, not to change the process right now.
Yeah, I think the board should be taking action. I mean, the board should be making a decision on that. It shouldn't be just
Right. So
defaulted.
we were saying we should modify the regional. It's a regional plan amendment prior to that.
What would the amendment be?
So if you can go back one slide. So in the policy, so if you're looking up, it's DP 5.6. So the current policy construction is if it is found that the milestones have not been attained. So the board vote would be that we vote that it has not been attained rather than an affirmative requirement.
Got it.
That they had been attained. But I think what you're suggesting, because I think ultimately the decision of whether the milestones has been attained. Brooke, is that you?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Yep.
You're all good. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me. You know, the responsibility, as you said, is yours. The decision is the board's either way. The question is whether or not, you know, like, and we're following the process as it was laid out when we adopted it. So at the time, the board said prior to making this decision, whether these milestones had been achieved or not, we'd like to hear from other people. We'd like to get the guidance of the Independent Advisory Council. That doesn't delegate that decision-making authority to that group. It provides additional input for you as you consider your decision. And then the process would be, if you reject that, there's this whole process that is initiated in DP 5.2 and 5.6 that says you would do two things. One, you would initiate a vote that says, I don't believe the milestones have been attained. And two, we'd provide written explanation. In this instance, so the topic that we're discussing is the funding milestones. So we would provide written explanation. We would suggest both to the Technical Advisory Committee, as well as to DCNR and CNRA and the bi-state consultation that developed that plan. Because ultimately that's what saying that the milestone has not been achieved of one of those two reflects on the plan that the agencies developed and provided to the legislatures. So I think it's important to provide specific guidance to them on how to rectify that.
So just so I'm clear, if going back to what's being proposed today, the staff proposal for today, the inaction by the board would accept the finding that the ongoing funding requirement has been met?
Correct. You would not be making the finding that it has not been met, or consistent with DP 5.6.
Got it. Okay. So that I think that's what I'm having an issue with, is I think we need to have a longer discussion on that. I mean, go on.
No, I think you're having, like, as we were rereading the policy, preparing for this and struggling with how to bring this forward, we were wrestling with this same issue with the current construction, right? So the regional plan are, these are the rules that bind this discussion and dictate how we bring this forward. And those, as you can see on the screen, the board, the supplemental compliance measures automatically go into effect. That's clear. If the board makes a finding that they have not been met. So there's no affirmative they have been met. It would be board action saying they have not been met based on the current construction.
Okay, well, I'd like the board to have the opportunity to make that distinction, like to either vote that it has or has not, rather than just having inaction. That'd be my 2 cents.
So if I may jump in, can I, Graham St. Michelle? Yeah, what I'm hearing, Alex, is I think what you'd be proposing is to make a motion that the milestone has not been met. That would be the proper way. That's why this is, the item today is agendized for possible action, to leave the board an opportunity to make a motion. But again, I think to be faithful to the regional plan as it's written, that's the proper wording of it, because that's what it is. It's that the supplemental compliance measures go into effect if it is found that the milestones have not been attained. And so I think you got to stick close to that. Obviously, if I can editorialize a little bit here, and this isn't to be flippant, but the board can make any kind of motion that it wants. You can make a motion to find that the waters of Lake Tahoe are clear, right? When any public body or agency takes action, that puts us in a different posture, and we, hypothetically, theoretically, an action that you take is subject to review, judicial review. It does put us in a different posture. I think the record here is exceedingly strong that if you were to make a motion that the milestones have been achieved, that would be very defensible on this record. But again, it puts us in a different posture, and that is not faithful to the way that the regional plan is written. No action is required if you choose to accept the report. And I do just want to point out that these reports will continue every 2 years. So part of the way that we do this now, it does set precedent a bit for the future. And so that's why we're really sticking to this, to be really faithful to the way that it's written. There's no action to be required. And I don't know that the board wants to get in a situation where every 2 years, when this report comes out and there's inclusion from the report that this evaluation that's required to do says that the milestones have been met, that will always come to the board and give the board an opportunity to object or disagree. But I don't know that it certainly doesn't require in the regional plan as written that the board needs to accept or act or adopt, that and take an affirmative action. So again, I think maybe I beat that down a bit, but the proper motion would be something like I move to find that the milestone has not been achieved, and let that vote play out, rather than trying to make some kind of an affirmative motion. That'd be my recommendation.
Yeah, and that's helpful. And I think I would turn back to my other board members, because it seemed like everyone that spoke had different feelings about whether or not we've met it or not. And there might just be, for newer board members, there might be a need to have a deeper dive on this to better understand what ongoing funding is. I know a lot of us have been through this conversation a number of times, but there are new people on the board that I think could benefit from a briefing, or this is something that the transportation subcommittee can be taking on and then coming back to the board to report back on. But yeah, we would definitely look to feedback from other board members if they're comfortable taking this, I guess, in action and deeming that we've met this ongoing funding requirement today.
So if I may quickly, and then I have Ashley and then Shelley, what I heard from our fellow board members is a desire to move this forward. I am comfortable with the staff recommendation as not just, I think, what the record shows, but also the best way to move the transportation funding conversation forward. And I think you mentioned partners. To me, it's also important. The CalAG and the League are two of our very important partners, but so are our local jurisdictions, the state of Nevada, who I think agreed with this recommendation. So I think the other partners that maybe haven't spoken, or some of them at the table have spoken, is that we are comfortable moving that forward is just my 2 cents on this.
If I could just respond to that. Yeah, I mean, I think I hear that too, but I'm hearing it's kind of like, I'm over this and I'm tired of talking about it. Not that, yes, I totally agree that we've met ongoing funding. So I think it would be good to get clarity from folks if folks actually do believe we've met ongoing funding, or if they're just tired of talking about this and want to move on.
I don't think that's very fair to Cindy.
No, this wasn't targeted at Cindy. Sorry.
No, I'm happy to have that dialogue. I think that's okay, Madam Chair. I feel very strongly that we need more money in transportation. There is no doubt. And all of us at the table that have met the commitments that we made to the partnership in that bi-state consultation, were very clear that we had to come up with the money locally because the states were not coming up with it in a manner that was going to solve our issues. So we've done that. We've made those commitments. And on top of that, we are continuing to seek those situations because we realize at any given time, the states and the federal contribution could change. That's beyond our control as a local board. We would then have to react to it and make those findings that we haven't met, but we've been meeting them to date and we've been exceeding them. And so that's where I'm comfortable making those findings today. With the clear understanding I put on the public record, we need more money for transportation, real solutions. So that's where I stand anyway. I don't want to speak for Brooke.
Sorry, I have Ashley next, and
Oh,
then I have
sorry.
Shelley, and then I have Belinda.
Thanks so much, Ashley Conrad Seda, for the record. Yeah, and I mean, we've obviously been discussing this for many years, and I think this is where I struggle with how to keep pressure on the states and the feds to be part of the solution because the locals are standing up so much of the effort, right? And so that's where I also, I've talked about this in the past that having an annual, we've met the dollars is challenging because obviously money comes and goes, and some years we'll have more from one pot than another. But I'm struggling with saying we've met it because I want to keep the pressure on those other institutions for contributing funding. And so I'm just saying that for the record that I want to support our local partners in doing so much work to meet their end of the bargain. And I still want an avenue to require or put pressure on the other contributors.
Ellie?
The problem is the supplemental compliance measure is no net VMT. That doesn't punish the federal government. That doesn't punish the states. It punishes the locals and projects that are in the queue, that may be service projects. They may be public safety projects. And I think that the real crux of this is what is the definition of ongoing? And are we at the 90-day deadline as we speak?
Yeah.
Do we have to take?
Probably has the exact date, but we're within it. I think it ends in September. We can look that up, but yeah.
So can you defer no action? No action on this item so that we can have further conversations? Because we're kind of operating in a very vague and at the best opaque environment here, because we have a disagreement about the language that was agreed to. And I think that's fundamentally important before we move forward.
I second that.
May I? Oh,
I just was supporting that. Yes.
Dan.
I apologize for jumping the queue. From staff's perspective, I think it would be very useful to be quite specific about which of the milestones we're talking about and how and why it's not being achieved?
The conversation, Dan, has dealt almost exclusively with funding the 777 plan, and whether or not ongoing implies that you have to have an indefinite commitment, which I think is aspirational, but completely unrealistic, or whether or not you deal with meeting that threshold on an annual basis.
So to be very clear there, it is DP 54A. The proposal from the bi-state consultation was deficient. That is the discussion that we are having right now. Is that
Right.
correct?
And that deficiency, and if we claim that as a deficient element of the plan, then the net VMT goes into effect. No net VMT
Correct.
goes into effect. And I think that's what I'm trying to avoid, because I think there are some legitimate issues that need to be addressed, and there's clarity that's needed. And to punish the basin, people who are working hard on projects that are in the queue, as I said, or being proposed, I think is detrimental, potentially to local governments and the people who live here. So I'm trying to think of some way of furthering the conversation and maybe deferring no action on this item. And I think the way this is written is awkward, frankly, in terms of handicapping us and making it difficult for us to defer this item so that we can engage in further conversation.
Madam Chair, I have
Yeah.
some additional comments, but I want to make sure we hear from all the other board members, if that's okay.
Yeah. Cody, and then I have Vince. Cody, you're on mute.
So sorry about that. Yes, I very much agree with Shelley's comments there. I think that we do need more, I need more understanding of what are the real consequences to us at the local level. To me, it's really the fact that we didn't exempt public safety projects is bothersome just on the outset of that. So I want to understand that at a deeper level, exactly what are we doing if we do trigger this. But to me, I so agree with Ms. Conrad Seda and Ms. Loomer that, we've got to keep the pressure on. We don't have the ongoing funding that we need to keep this up. And I think that these were put in place to keep that pressure on. And so I really feel like we need to take more time. I don't want to do this today because I don't think we have what we need. And so I very much agree with Shelley that let's try to see if we can just push this out and not make one decision or the next. And the transportation subcommittee is a great idea. I think we should definitely spend more time at this.
So my question procedurally quick before Vince is, if we take no action today, what would prevent the board from continuing to work on this issue in the transportation committee? Are those two things mutually exclusive, or could we take no action today, but not have that actually stall anything?
Graham, St. Michelle. Yeah. So just orienting here a little bit. Once again, the direct answer to your question, Madam Chair, is no action is fine. And it doesn't preclude ongoing discussion. It doesn't preclude, some other. The fact of the matter remains, DP 5.6, which is up there on the screen, says that the compliance measures go into effect if it is found that the milestones have not been met. Unless and until those milestones have been found by vote to have not been met, the status quo remains. And it doesn't mean that funding isn't important, that we can't continue to work on these issues. However the board would like to do that through committees, you would have to make that decision, how you want to work on that as an agency. But today, what's happened, the reason we're here is because pursuant to the regional plan, as required, your advisory committee had to do a report that evaluated the milestones. The report came out, it made a finding, presented you with that information, and some board members wanted to talk about that. So, and so that's why we're here. And in order to give direction, if you want to make direction today, you would make a motion to make the finding that it has not been attained, if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to do that and you just want to go forward and continue the conversations, nothing is required. We all understand, there's no formal motion about that other than you could make a motion like that to say, keep the conversations going. But, we have to think about what does that direct staff to do? And, when we get motions from the board and direction from the board, it's very helpful as kind of the intermediary between the board and staff of like what exactly you're directing. And I would appreciate that guidance. I think we'd appreciate that guidance to give to staff of what exactly you want.
So Graham, if I could just ask real quick,
Hey, sorry, I'm so sorry. I got Vince next, and then I have Mr. Kiekeffer, and then I'll come back. And then, I'm sorry, and Belinda was in there too. I'm just trying, everyone wants to ask questions, so I'm trying to keep an order to it. Vince, and then I'm sorry, Belinda, I skipped you, then Belinda, then Ben, then Cody. Go ahead, Vince.
I guess I was going to kind of echo what Graham just said, which, these things take so much staff time, so much board time, so much public time, everything, that if we are putting this off because we don't have enough information, we feel, then we need to be very specific about what information we need from staff to look at this again, because to me, it feels like they've kind of given us everything they got. Like, I don't know that putting it off another month, we're going to uncover anything different. It's kind of all out there. So it's a tough decision. I don't think any of us are super happy with it, because I think we all wish we had some magical pot of money that flowed to us continuously that we could use for all the things we need to use it for. And unfortunately, that's not the case right now. And I do think staff is committed to it. I think this board is committed to looking for it. But in terms of the action today, I'm just not sure that we're going to get anything else that's going to make this more clear to us in our next meeting. So if there are things, let's please be very specific about what we're asking staff to present. If we're asking them if we're asking to put this off. Thanks.
Thanks, Vince. Belinda?
Sure. So just very quickly, I think Vince said it for me that, we're in a position right now where we've used this procedure in the past, where there has been agreement on the metrics that we were using. I heard Dan very clearly state, and it was proven in the charts that we saw, that we have met those set thresholds of funding. I think, if there's questions about what ongoing means, I think that those discussions should happen. But to me, the bottom line is how much money have we collected, whether it's state, federal, or local, and we have exceeded that every year, right, Dan? Okay, so I feel very comfortable with moving ahead today. I totally get that, hey, it would be wonderful to have, crystal ball to see, when federal money was going to be available, when state money was going to be available, et cetera, and I appreciate that those discussions have to happen. I just, coming from state government, that's so uncontrollable depending upon who's in leadership. And again, it's just one of these moving targets. But I appreciate the fact that we have to have those discussions and have some, direction that we can give to staff in terms of what they're fighting for, with both legislators at the state level. So that I think it's probably said enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think it's actually pretty clear, crystal clear that the measures have been met. The question over ongoing to me is that there's an ongoing commitment to seek continuing appropriations from local governments. The 777 plan is predicated on the idea that local and state governments will operate through their continuing appropriation cycles to fund these projects. And if that's the agreed upon mechanism, then of a balance for funding, then it inherently assumes that we're going to have to go back and seek continued appropriations on an annual basis. We can't. No legislature is going to say, or local government is going to be able to promise that in 5 years that appropriation will be ongoing. It just doesn't work that way. We all know that. So to me, it's all of these measures have been met. I think we're good to go, and I think continuing discussions in the Transportation Committee over operating funding is perfectly appropriate, but that can be done totally outside of this process.
Cody?
Yeah, so I guess I was just saying if we do nothing today, we're just basically agreeing with the staff recommendation if that's what Graham was kind of recommending. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then again, part of what I would want, what I'm really curious about is what does it do if we do say that it has not been obtained? Like I have to imagine the intention of this policy when it was passed was that if we aren't getting that funding, that this mechanism that gets triggered would then create the political will to get the funding. And are we not doing what we should do to make, to use the policy that we put in place to make sure that we have sustainable funding? Because again, if we do have to stop these projects because that funding's not happening, well, then all of a sudden you have people that want to get their projects done and they've got political will to help us get this funding. So are we, I think that's what has to be considered. And that's for me why, just tabling this, maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 3 months that the transportation subcommittee can really wrestle with that and find out what would this do? Like, what is it, the consequence, but what is also the benefit? And that's what I don't know and what I don't see, and why I agree with Shelley that like taking the time for that is not a bad idea. It's the work that we should be doing.
Graham and then Brooke.
Yeah, I think this is Graham St. Michelle. I think, the report came out as it was required and it made an evaluation as was required, and the board was required to receive that. I don't think there's anything necessarily that precludes or prohibits the board from at any time in the future, uh, you know, deciding that at this time we want to make a finding that this milestone has not been attained. There's a 90-day review period, but I think when that 90-day ends, it's not like the governing board suddenly can never and maybe that's a point of clarification here that helps everybody. The DP 5.6 trigger can always be pulled if that's what the board chooses. It doesn't have to happen within this 90-day period. And the only other piece I just wanted to clarify for Cody as well, and anyone else that to the extent this helps, is just remember that the funding milestones were the very first of the milestones. We move forward over the next many years until we get to that final, was it 2045, where we're looking at incremental reductions in VMT. VMT reduction is really the threshold. That is the threshold. And to the extent that those incremental VMT reductions in the future are not being satisfied, these compliance measures will kick in. And presumably funding for transportation projects is part of being able to meet those future VMT incremental reductions. So again, that's meant to just be some assurance that I don't see, I'm going way out of my lane as the attorney, I think, but just to counsel that I think, it's not to be saying that the staff position is a kind of turning a blind eye on the importance of funding.
Brooke? Thank you, Madam Chair. It's given me a lot to think about, and I've been hearing about this argument for years. So this has been helpful to hear from both the people who've been wrestling with this, including our partners, but then to hear from a new perspective of people that are just kind of coming into the fold and how they see it. I think maybe there's a middle of the road opportunity here. If we have to look at the question of have we satisfied the financial requirement to date, to Mr. Keykefer's point, I think it's very clear, yes, we have. If you go all the way back to Ms. Aldine's comments at the very beginning, where she really targeted the word ongoing, that there seems to be a conflict between all of us, even us as a board, but certainly including, our significant partners, of what that word means. I don't think we can predict the future, and I don't think we can obligate future governing boards and bodies to indefinite funding. I mean, God, if we could, wouldn't that be great? So I'm thinking that maybe what we do is today we agree that we've met the obligations as they've been laid out for today, and we refer this matter to the Transportation Commission or Committee to maybe take a look at what does the word ongoing mean, and maybe could they even do a projection of 5-year funding, what that might look like, or a 10-year funding model. Again, knowing that we can't obligate anybody. And we don't know, like what the Emerald Bay Shuttle is going to produce. We're hoping to make that a transit opportunity that funds itself. But all that funding should come into play with regards to local contribution. It's so impossible to really be able to be clear as to what we need to do. But I think if I had to decide today, have we met the obligations today? Yes. In the future, we got to figure that out.
I'll just add, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think I have great news for you, and that we have to do nothing to do that. So I will, Ms. Director Reagan?
If I could just build on that, it's the perfect, our legal counsel's tee up and member lanes is perfect for the comments I wanted to leave with you here. Number one, at a high level, I think it's important not to lose sight that we are all in pretty violent agreement that we want to drive down VMT. Like everyone shares that common goal of improving transportation, bringing more investment, and reducing VMT. So, and I appreciate our stakeholders from the California Attorney General's office and as well as Keep Tahoe Blue. But this discussion and previous discussions has been alluded to, indicates that this is a complicated issue. The ultimate eye on the prize standard is our threshold standard. So we're getting a little, diving deep into the policy language, which is regional plan policy, but we are on the hook to achieve the VMT threshold, and there are milestones along the way. What has always been conflated is funding equals a direct reduction in VMT. It's one of the many factors that will affect a reduction in VMT. So the next threshold evaluation will be measuring our plans against the standards and the threshold. The next threshold evaluation report, Dan, will be coming out, in 4 more years, the TVAL in 2 more years. Oh, is it that soon? Oh gosh, you better get to
It'll be a
work.
2027.
So Dan
report,
really needs
released
to
in 28.
move on. Yeah, thank you. So it's coming very soon. We have another 2-year reporting cycle of this. And I just wanted to remind the board, there are 2 board actions that have already documented the commitment of the governing board and the agency staff to continue that commitment to funding of ongoing funding pursuits. One is the Regional Transportation Board Plan action of July of last year. So in that Regional Transportation Plan, we are not showing that same $20 million gap. We're showing a constrained foreseeable funding of $2.5 billion, and we are actually exceeding pace on that. So that's an action this board has taken that's committed to those 100 plus, many hundreds of projects in the transportation space. The work plan that you just adopted last month shows transportation as a strategic priority. And there was a very robust discussion at our governing board strategic planning session about the need for not just planning, but implementation, and transit funding and ongoing operational funding is a key goal of not just this board, but those of you that serve on the Tahoe Transportation District Board share that, as well as our communities. So a couple of actions I think are very clear that we're all committed to ongoing support for funding. And so I just didn't want to lose that as we kind of took that deep dive. But I appreciate all the perspectives here. And then maybe just to put a fine point on it, that we feel we are following our policy to the T. And if there is to be a change in how we, affirm in a different fashion, that would be a separate conversation, a separate item for a regional plan amendment. Thanks.
Shelley.
Concluding remark. The irony here is if we were to implement these supplemental compliance measures of no net VMT, that would also negate the effort to develop affordable housing in this space and workforce housing, which is designed to reduce VMT by allowing people to work, to live where they work. So I think it would be highly counterproductive for us not to move this forward.
All right, thanks everyone. We will move on then to agenda item 8, which is executive reports. I will pass it over to Julie and Graham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, Julie Reagan, TRPA's Executive Director. For the record, really appreciate the discussion around that. These matters get really technical. I'm sure all of our mental capacities are, exhausted from that. So thank you. We'll try to reframe, get out of the VMT technical space and talk about some big picture items. But again, thank you for the thoughtful conversation around that. And thank you, Dan Segan, for your presentation and for your work on this really important topic. All right. Since we last met in June at the governing board, July 4th happened. We got a little preview of that from our conversation and our introduction with the U.S. Forest Service, acting forest supervisor. But I wanted to put a fine point. Parades were had, fireworks happened, almost 500 volunteers cleaned the beaches on July 5th. We did collectively as a basin pick up a lot of trash, but it was less than last year. And it's been consistently less. And I think it's actually a great tie back to the last conversation where, when the basin sets their mind to something and we come together as a partnership, we're getting things done. And things are happening. And it's important to keep that momentum. And yes, keep the pressure on, because no one wants to have a national news article on July 5th that goes around the world that says Lake Tahoe is trashed. And so there is always a lever and a hammer. And I appreciate the discussion on the transportation side. And there equally is a hammer on the destination stewardship side, because we all want to have the community locally and regionally and globally know that how much we care about this lake. And it took a lot of work to get less trash year over year since we had a big uptick a few years back. And that wasn't by accident. It took a lot of work, took a lot of partnership, private, public, and a big shout out to the U.S. Forest Service, who mobilized a lot more law enforcement presence, local jurisdictions at great expense, who had a lot more enforcement. It's those 3 E's. It's education, it's engineering, and it's enforcement. And we did all of them. And I think it shows that we can improve the experience, not only for the local community and our regional community that wants to enjoy the lake, but anyone who's visiting for Lake Tahoe for the first time. Also, an emerging threat, the golden mussels. We're maintaining that vigilance with our boat inspections, our partners at the Resource Conservation District that are looking at every boat coming in, and we have intercepted 5 with golden mussels. This is the new threat, the new species that we just uncovered in the Delta area, and we are not letting our guard down. It is, as Dennis Zabaglo, you heard from presentations, it is quagga mussels on steroids in the situation with golden mussels. So we've already been geared up to keep quaggas out. Now the golden mussels are a new threat. We've caught some. The big push, and for all of you to please push out in your circles to clean your gear, clean, drain, and dry. You might have seen the billboards coming up on Highway 50 on Spooner. Coming up on Highway 50 on the California side at the big Folsom Auto Mall, one of the biggest billboards I've ever seen in my life. Just saw it, having been out of town, and clean your gear, stop golden mussels. So we have to get the word out that kayaks and stand-up paddleboards can move these into our watershed, and that would be a disaster. So I just wanted to let the board know that our teams are working very hard to keep moving forward on all those high priority programs. And we also had some people that were tampering with their inspection seals to try to circumvent the system on inspections. And our legal committee will be hearing from that later. We're bringing some, we'll be investigating and potentially bringing enforcement actions so that we can send the message that you don't mess with our program. I'll take the next slide, please. Okay, this is on message from the last item. Big response here to the Emerald Bay Shuttle, which was funded by philanthropy, by private dollars, by public dollars, mitigation funds. We just moved some out of committee and recommended, and you voted on the consent calendar for supporting that Emerald Bay Shuttle, and we're off to a great start. So thank you to Member Lane, Member Gustafson, all of our community partners, and the multi-jurisdictional partnership in the all hands meetings that Member Lane has been convening on Emerald Bay, and also on the Nevada side, the East Shore Express. Look at the ridership we had last year, and the participation this year is also very strong. These are Emerald Bay Shuttle is a fee service, which is $10. And the East Shore Express is free, but transit's never free per the last discussions. It is a big expense. We are trying to incentivize people to ride it with the free service in some of our Lake Link and Heart Connects, but there is a great cost, and I think we all just committed that we're going to continue to work on that. But some progress and some bright spots, more law enforcement, coming into the picture at Emerald Bay. Certainly, more tickets being written. There's work to get some standardized ticket prices around the lake, because there are different enforcement rules between California and Nevada, and we're trying to get some consistency around that. And I want to also note, Mayor Bass brought this up in his remarks, but the Lake Link service, which truly got off the ground sooner than was planned on the South Shore because of the stakeholder engagement from the public, the community, from the Attorney General's office in California to launch Lake Link as part of the Event Center program. And it launched ahead of schedule and has been wildly successful. And now the team is expanding that service to the Y and up to the top of Kingsbury and throughout the Nevada side on the South Shore. So great progress, but eye on the ball, and continued commitments are needed to keep that going. I'll take the next slide. Just a couple more. We will continue our roast with Paul Nielsen, who's had a lot of fun in his first deputy director capacity in front of you. And just again, how pleased we are to say that Paul is building on 30 years of work. And we have a little new acronym around the office. If you've ever watched, Better Call Saul, better call Paul, better call Paul. Oh, don't know the answer. Better call Paul, because Paul's pretty much seen every question you can come up with in TRPA land, and has done a good job of answering those questions.
For the record, I did take 2 years off to recharge my batteries. So I just want to state that. And yeah, I'm honored to be sitting in this chair. I know how fortunate I am to be sitting here as a deputy director and chief planning officer. Like, I get that. And I'll just say to the board real quickly, I promise you two things. One, I don't have all the answers. Nobody does when it comes to Lake Tahoe. But if I don't have them, I'll get the answer and I'll come back to you. I'll follow up. Second, I give you my best. I'm committed to doing that for the environment, for the community, for staff, the APC governing board. I'll give you my best.
Thank you. Well said. Yay. We'll take that. Yeah.
And I noticed, Paul, this must be your outfit for governing board meetings, because I'm looking at the photo and I'm looking at you. Either that or you don't change your clothes very often.
It's a different shirt. I did get a little raise. I'm going to go. My sister's going to help me buy some clothes. So yeah, no, it is a different shirt. Thank you, Vincent.
Duly noted. Let the record reflect. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, members. We also have some other staff that I wanted to introduce. We have Shayla Dorset. Is Shayla, there she is, still she's been waiting patiently through this whole discussion. I can't wait to debrief. Shayla and her husband moved to our area in Nevada from Washington State, and Shayla will be our public service specialist at the front desk. Some of you have already met Shayla, but she missed nature and found her home here at TRPA, bringing a world of experience. She has experience in the nonprofit community, helping people experiencing homelessness. She has great compassion for the people that walk in our front door that kind of come in and going, how in the heck do I navigate this complicated set of programs and policies and rules at TRPA? We do have complicated rules, and Shayla and our entire team in permitting compliance is upping our game to explain them. So welcome, Shayla, to our team. And then we also have Stephanie Lohika, and I appreciate Stephanie's experience here locally. A couple things of note. She came from an architecture firm locally and has worked with a lot of projects on the other side of the table, helping project applicants prepare their applications. So she has a really interesting perspective, has a degree from Berkeley, and we are also very honored to have her because she was one of the first female tours in the Eagle Scout program. So she is an Eagle Scout. So you need to be prepared. You just go and say hello to Stephanie. And she brings a world of experience and enthusiasm for our mission. And just to echo Paul's comments, you know, nobody, not even our PhD incredible science partners have all the answers, but we bring the best and brightest to the table to put, you know, our shoulder to the wheel and to work together to get it done. So Stephanie and Shayla both joining our permitting and compliance teams, and we're very happy to have you. Welcome. I think I have one. Yeah. One more slide and we'll turn it over to the legal report. A couple things coming up that I wanted to flag for you. As discussed about traffic and counts and data, it is complicated. And we have not updated our travel models for many years. So you or those you know might be getting a survey in the mail about your travel behavior. So I wanted to flag that we are targeting around 4,000 respondents for that. So on a basin community of 55,000, that's pretty significant to get an up-to-date picture on how people travel around the region. And it is hideously complicated to have a resort community to capture these kind of commute patterns, which are in a big city are a lot more predictable of, you know, work commute times and in and out. We have freight going in, you know, a highway that runs coast to coast through our main streets. We have visitation and we have local community members and we have commuters. So I believe this work will really, it will aid our goal in the future to work on transportation funding issues by having that best data available. So the team is working very hard to get this going. So if anyone calls you or asks questions about, is this legit? It is, and it's a very big initiative of our of various departments at TRPA. So also you heard the good presentation about the summit. Any questions that have might arise from today's discussion or others, certainly feel free to see me, Kim Carringer, Devin Middlebrook. We had a Nevada Oversight Committee meeting last Friday here in this room, and it was the last meeting of the interim committee here at Tahoe. The following one will be the last meeting of the interim, and I appreciate all of those who have participated, have been there for us, have attended to support our staff. August 20th is the work session, and that'll be back in Carson City and the legislature. And one of the things the committee I'm sure will be taking up is, you know, commitment to funding. So again, there's a through line of all these conversations. I already mentioned that in August, we'll be bringing back that conversation around herbicides and glyphosate at the EIP committee. We have Dr. Stephanie Hampton from UC Davis Turk coming in August to give us the State of the Lake report. And we're also going to do an information briefing from the U.S. Forest Service, not just our local basin management unit, but also the Humboldt-Toyabe, the HT, to talk about the master planning initiative that's underway up at the top of Mount Rose at Tahoe Meadows. And I really do appreciate hearing from Member Guthrow and Member Hill on the community engagement around that. There are some workshops coming up, and it very much ties to our destination stewardship, how we manage resources in a time when we want people to enjoy the outdoors, but how do we best manage that to protect the resource, but still and meeting our goals. So that's coming up as an info briefing. And in September, mark your calendar for the September board meeting. We're going to do a field tour and we're going to look on the Nevada side on Highway 28, and we're going to see some of the implementation of the 28 corridor. And we're going to talk about projects that are going along that corridor and all the work that's underway. So we'll have a regular business, most likely here, and we'll stage from here and take a bus and go up the corridor. And so board member Rodriguez, I wanted to note in September, we'll be going out on the 28 corridor. So make sure to tell Secretary Aguilar that 28 is alive and well in our discussions, and we'll be covering the latest because there's a lot to cover. We have area plan amendment coming through Regional Planning Committee. We have another transportation committee looking at the Federal Transportation Improvement Plan, and that's what we call the FTIP. Perfect time to tease out some of the conversations that we just had around the dais. Well, I'm happy to talk with our Chair Hill and Vice Chair Bass about how we fold in some of the conversation we heard in the last item into that Transportation Committee meeting. So we'll get organized on that. We have our fall inflationary adjustment coming that we do every year, where we map to inflation for our filing fees, and then some appeals are in the pipeline as well. So a couple of months of some pretty substantive issues. And I think with that, I'm on to our general counsel report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just jump right in. I just wanted to, I keep the, sort of the legal developments. I want to briefly recognize the conclusion of Eisenstecken versus TRPA. With the board's adoption of the monopine ordinance last month, we fulfilled our obligation under a settlement agreement, and the plaintiffs dismissed that litigation with prejudice earlier this month. And so just, I don't know how much that ordinance was on, like it was part of a settlement agreement that we negotiated with the plaintiffs. Great, outcome, I think, for the agency, long running litigation matter that we were able to bring to a close, and at the same time advance some of our regulatory goals. And just want to thank the legal committee, in particular, Haley and Alex and Ben and Belinda and Shelley, of course, because we had several closed session meetings where we talked about these settlement ideas. So good result, and we can close the book on that case. And other than that, no further legal updates this month.
And it's right back at you and Catherine and Jack and Marcia. Thank you, guys. Next up, we have, unless there's any questions or comments on the executive reports, seeing none. We have governing board member reports. Any agenda item 9, any reports from our governing board members? Nope. All right.
Yep,
Brooke, go ahead.
Chair, I feel like, there was a lot of really great recommendations, and I think in the, our director, Julie Reagan, just said that she's going to have our subcommittee look at that. I just want to make sure that we are going to have the transportation subcommittee fully take a look at this. And I'd love clarity on the question around, can this decision be made outside of the 90-day shot clock? I think, Graham, you may have said that you need to maybe research that. So I think that'd be really good, useful information for us as the board. But I just want to make sure that we have direction that this is coming back to the transportation subcommittee to review. And Ms. Lane had great suggestions to look at what does ongoing mean, all those kind of things that I think it was brought up. But I just want to make sure that we're on board to do that.
Madam Chair, and Mayor Bass, this is Julie Reagan. Happy to meet with you and our chair, Hill, to flesh out what that agenda item would look like, but committed to bring that back and to definitely honor the great discussion that we had.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And Brooke?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention, again, with regards to the Emerald Bay pilot project this summer, we're doing everything the same out there as we did in 2025, but bigger and better. So that means more barriers, more shuttles, and we've doubled our efforts on enforcement. But the big piece I just wanted to bring to the board's attention is that we raised the no parking fine from $100 to $300. So we've got that in effect up there as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Please, Cindy.
I had a quick update as well. And sorry, I'm not on the transportation committee, but I will make sure that I get my data to you all so that we don't ignore what some local jurisdictions are already doing. The second item I wanted to bring up was a great amount of gratitude to the U.S. Forest Service. They did staff up by, I think, 22 additional folks in the basin for the 4th of July. And I'm sorry he wasn't here for my comments, but I will pass those along. We reconvened because we did have the roving groups of unsupervised teens that we have experienced at other locations around the basin migrated into Placer County and actually into my neighborhood on the 3rd, which was a really interesting experience as both an elected official and a governing board member to watch hundreds of kids who went to a beach that many of the local kids all went to in much smaller numbers. But with the use of social media, there were hundreds of kids. They outnumbered law enforcement. But the challenges with law enforcement when they arrest a underage individual is to get them reunited with their parents who might be not in the basin. And so it was very interesting to hear those comments as we tackle this issue of parents renting homes and then not coming with them. to our jurisdictions. So, we are learning as we go what TikTok takeovers are, what Snapchat is. Even us older folks, I had to ask my kids, what did you guys use? And it was good old word of mouth back in the day. And, but also, really appreciate the coordination that came from state parks, Forest Service, and our local county sheriff to address those issues. And then to remember in context, because we didn't have serious crimes or arrests that needed to occur, that the vast majority of people coming here are coming here to do the right thing. And we forget that when we hear about these incidents. And I had to remind some of my neighbors that all in all, the kids were pretty well behaved, just intimidating with the numbers that showed up. And as they tried to get them to take their garbage with them, but they were running from the sheriffs and law enforcement, they didn't take it all. So some of us went down to help pick up. But anyway, I just wanted to commend the Forest Service in particular because of and they committed to doing that next year as well. So really appreciate that.
Chair, do you mind if this is Kim Carringer. I just wanted to follow up on Supervisor Gustafson's comments on, again, how grateful we are to the Forest Service for all the extra law enforcement they brought to the table at 4th of July and what a difference it made. TRPA, our staff is working on a letter right now to send as a thank you on behalf of the partnership from Team Tahoe on that level of law enforcement they brought. So we'll show that to you and just so they know, they can pass it up to their leadership that we're also appreciative.
Very much so. Thank you.
All right, moving on then to committee reports. Agenda item 10, any reports from any committees? Not seeing any. All right, that moves us on to our final agenda item. Agenda item 11 is the general public interest comment period. Any member of the public wishing to address the governing board on any item listed or not listed on this agenda, including items on the consent calendar, may do so at this time. Individuals or groups who have already commented on items listed on the agenda are not permitted to comment on that same topic. We'll hear comments limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and we will start in the room. If people have comments they'd like to make in the room, please come forward.
Hi, everyone. Tara Thornton, Protect Tahoe. We've really appreciated all the meetings we've been having with the board members, the staff, executive and science team. And we are thankful that the issue is going to the EIP committee for review at the next board meeting. We would like to urge that we get to meet with the final members we have not met with, especially the subcommittee members immediately. And we would urge you move fast on the process. You need an initial environmental checklist, findings of no significant impact, and then move to vote for banning or to change ordinance to explicitly prohibit. We don't think there needs to be any lengthy EIS process involved in this. There is equivocal swaps and absolute other prescriptive tools that can be used. So there is not something like, what will our landscape here be like without use of conventional herbicides? In fact, if that were going to become an issue, then we would challenge back that there was no EIS done for the use of conventional herbicides terrestrially. We don't want a big prolonged money spend like that. It's not necessary. I think you're going to find the checklist and no findings on this because there are other prescriptive tools to use. Also would like to add that, just to give you some perspective, that in California data from pesticide use report from DPR, the latest finding data is from 2023. Back in 2016, there was only 4,000 pounds of conventional pesticides applied to forests in the state of California. That number was doubled a little over a couple of years. And then after 2000, by 2023, it went up to 266,000 pounds applied on the forest, primarily on wildfire burn scars. This is a new market. It is not an entrenched or commodity established market like ag industry. This is a new market for the chemical industry. and it is not necessary nor needed. And the public is outraged that it's even being considered, that it's happened. No one knew that these were happening. Even people that work on this issue didn't realize the scope of what is happening and the scale of it. It needs to be stopped immediately. It can be unwound. There is no need for it. And we, want to work with you. We have every resource needed and tool available that we can help bring to fill out the conversation so that the board and the subcommittees and the staff can make whatever, have the tools and information they need to make the decisions they need so this process can move quickly. And we'd urge that you do move it quickly. If you want to look at large wildfire scale things, look at the province of Quebec. And a 25-year ban on conventional herbicides for wildfires there. You'll see that the use or non-use does not on the landscape long-term affect it, wildfires overall, but short-term use of conventional herbicides actually increases the risk of fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wishing to make comment? Come on up. And thanks for you're always so good about your 3 minutes. Thank you for that. It's super respectful and I appreciate it.
Good afternoon. My name is Reed Reichart. Last month, I shared how chaparral is playing a vital role in the Caldor's recovery, citing the Forest Service's own website on chaparral's value for erosion control, watershed cover, wildlife habitat, and nutrient cycling. What I didn't have time to share is research about what chaparral itself needs. The California Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force, a collaboration that includes the Forest Service, found that losing chaparral too soon after fire, before it replenishes soil seed banks, reduces the native plant's ability to ever recover and opens the door to invasive, more flammable grasses. In other words, the Forest Service's plan contradicts research they help produce. It will likely increase fire risk, require more herbicide in future years, and most ironically, leave us wishing we could get the forest back to exactly where it is right now. Sound familiar? We've long recognized Comstock as a mistake we're still managing today. We're now on the verge of a mistake driven by the same motivations with far wider biological reach in a more fragile environment. The difference this time is we know, you know what's at stake. So when the Forest Service uses words like thoughtful approach about planning to mass spray a probable carcinogen that even Germany, home of producer Bayer, prohibits in public areas, and when they use words like limited application and low volume without disclosing actual volumes, that vagueness should alarm you. If it's so limited, just use hand crews instead. The Forest Service's own FAQ ends with 6 words. Invasive plants can convert entire ecosystems. Yes, exactly. So why pursue a plan that may dramatically increase invasive, more flammable species in Tahoe forests? Of course, that's a rhetorical question at this point, Comstock. The real question is whether this board will allow a naturally recovering forest near Myers to become the entry point for perhaps the greatest threat the Tahoe Basin has ever faced. Please remember one of the core reasons this agency was created, to protect this place we love. Doing that now means simply adhering to your own MOU. The Forest Service plan is the opposite of reforestation. It is anything but routine, and it involves chemical use that was never exempted from review. You must demand the Forest Service submit an application now. I'll also note numerous written comments on this matter, including mine, are missing from your public record, while later ones appear. Please correct that. There's over 30. Finally, amending TRPA's Code of Ordinances to prohibit synthetic herbicides will be the most consequential action this agency will ever take to protect the Tahoe Basin, its lake, forests, and wildlife, and the people who call this place home. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know staff works really hard to get comments uploaded. I know we do by certain times, so I'm sure you guys.
Yes, I'll ask maybe Catherine to comment on that, but yeah, we're pretty diligent on that.
I know you are.
Comments that specifically cited this board meeting were provided at this board meeting. We are collecting all comments received on glyphosate in a separate folder, so they are in the record, and they'll be provided when we have an action item.
Thank you.
And I'll just ask, I don't think there's anyone else in the room to comment. Madam Chair, excuse me, are you ready to go online?
Yes, thank you, Catherine.
We have 5 hands raised online. First hand up is Sophia Heydrich. Sophia, please unmute to make your comment.
Good afternoon now, TRPA Governing Board and staff. My name is Sophia Heydrich, and I am the Advocacy Director for Mountain Area Preservation, or MAP. I also participate on the Tahoe Living Working Group, and I just wanted to give a couple of brief comments about the Cultivating Community item. First, I wanted to say thank you to staff for creating an alternative that focuses on housing preservation and getting folks into existing units. This is something that MAP has supported from the very beginning, so we're thrilled to see it moving forward. From my perspective, this is the most environmentally friendly option and also likely the fastest option for getting people into homes as quickly as we can. You all know building anything in Tahoe takes a long time. So even with all of the incentives on the table, we're probably not going to see a bunch of new workforce housing developments anytime soon. In line with Ms. Aldine, I think the best outcome is likely a combination of the two approaches, and I look forward to having those discussions once the EIS is out and we better understand the potential impacts associated with the various policy considerations. That said, I do find it frustrating that we still don't have any concrete policy ideas showing how the TRPA will actually unlock existing units or what the housing preservation approach actually looks like. We have brought a lot of ideas to the table on this, creating a mitigation fee and using that fund to support programs run by local jurisdictions, or considering a housing threshold and an impact fee, or developing incentives for local jurisdictions to create their own programs where they don't already exist, etc. And I feel like every time we've brought up an idea, we've been pretty much been told that it won't work or the TRPA doesn't have the ability to do it. So I think the question is, what can the TRPA do? And now we're 2 years in and we don't have an answer to that. Even now, it's one of the alternatives under consideration, the housing preservation alternative, but there are no details about what that alternative actually looks like. The other alternative, the housing forward alternative, is well defined. For the most part, we know what those policies would be. So it is frustrating that even after almost 2 years of kind of beating the drum on unlocking existing units and a lot of support from the community on this topic, there's nothing concrete behind it. I hope that this option gets a fair shake because it seems like efforts thus far have been focused on the housing forward approach. I just want to end by saying that MAP does want to be a partner on this. I would love it if there were a brainstorming roundtable specifically focused on the housing preservation approach and what those policies could look like, because right now it seems like the EIS is moving forward without a full understanding of what that approach actually means and what the EIS should analyze. I think that that's everything. I appreciate you all today. There was a lot of good comments. That VMT item was very interesting, so I appreciate all of your thoughtful consideration to what we have to say.
The next hand raised is Jenny Lundeen. Jenny, please unmute to make your comment.
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to echo the concerns about the use of glyphosate and other herbicides in the Tahoe Basin. I am right outside the Tahoe Basin, so unfortunately I've already been affected by the spraying, and it's deeply concerning, the quantity, the amounts, the volume, and the sheer devastation it's causing in our forests. So I would hate to see this happen in the Tahoe Basin. I also am concerned about some of the areas that have been sprayed near the basin that are likely going to be affecting the wildlife, also blowing into the area, and affecting El Dorado County's water sources in general. So again, I would like to see this more action taken on the part of TRPA. I'd love to see this as an agenda item, actually. I know we've been speaking for months about this, so I would really appreciate more quick action. Thank you.
The next hand raised is Melissa Soderston. Melissa, please unmute to make your comment.
Yes, Melissa Soderston, representing Tahoe Forest Matter, as well as Eco Integrity Alliance. First, I would like to say again that holding these public interest comments at the end of the meeting is not conducive to transparency or true engagement. We should be allowed to make our comments at the beginning of the meeting when we know that all parties are equally engaged and paying attention, and we should be able to comment after each individual agenda item. Thank you. Now, I too would like to talk about glyphosate and extend that into the broader issue of what is happening in our forests. I would like to encourage you as well to go down Pioneer Trail and see the horror that is being perpetrated on these environments. The Forest Service seems to have forgotten that the forest contains more than simply trees. These are entire ecosystems, and habitat and food sources, denning, all of it is being destroyed by these projects. They are leaving none of our native vegetation. When it comes to glyphosate, we know for a fact that most of the invasive species are actually highly resistant to glyphosate. They are not trying to prevent the growth of invasive species. They are trying to prevent the growth of our native shrubs, vital to forest health. I encourage you to go out and walk within the Caldor Burn perimeter. This is a beautifully rejuvenating landscape, absolutely essential habitat, highly lacking in our forests. The 25 trees per acre thing has been debunked numerous times, including by the Forest Service's own studies. Our forests are not meant to be park-like, as witnessed by numerous photos from before the Comstock era. They are there. Please go look at them. What's happening out there is causing long-term irreparable harm to our forest ecosystems, to our watersheds, to our wildlife, and to our future as a human race. We cannot exist without these ecosystems. People do come up here to Tahoe to experience a much cooler, more habitable climate on those hot days in the valley. We don't have those cool days anymore. It has been near 90 degrees and it's not even August yet. If you go walk through these thinned forest areas, there is no shade, there is no habitat, there is no food, it is not cooler. They are much hotter, drier, windier. Our soil is being dried out. All of that is dust and sediment that is ending up in our watershed. If you truly care about the quality of lake clarity and our environment here, we need to focus on building out our transportation infrastructure, including ways for people to get into the basin without bringing their vehicles. We need better sewage and drainage. We need home and infrastructure hardening, buried utility lines. We still have drop lines connected to trees. These are the things that will be actionable in the future. Please take a different stance. You need scientific oversight, not a rubber stamp board. Thank you.
The next hand raise is KT Mary. KT, please unmute to make your comment.
This will just be 2 minutes. Hi there. I'm so sorry. I was struggling to unmute. My name is KT Mary. I am a Nevada native and have been in the area my entire life. And I'm also commenting on the herbicide, pesticide proposed use and my concern over that. I completely resonate and agree with everyone who has mentioned that these issues need to be a meeting on the agenda. And this call has been going on for hours. And for those of us juggling work lives, I know there's a lot of people that want to comment, and you guys are just making that very difficult for the public to do that. And I think that you should look at how these herbicides are viewed in Europe, how they're used in other places, and look particularly at what's happening in Ladero County in Ladero Ranch down in Orange County, California, and what spraying these types of pesticides in things like parks are wreaking havoc, not only on the wildlife and the natural environment, but on children and the rare bone cancers that are now sprouting up. And I can this is going to be leading to expensive legal issues for that county in the future, and how devastating it is, not only for the environment, the ecosystems, which are very, very precious in Lake Tahoe, but for what that means for the community and our vulnerable animals and children. And so I just urge this board for the community to look at this very seriously. The data does not back up what you guys are proposing, and it is just reckless harm that you are looking at creating. And so I think that this needs to be an issue that you need to really be taking seriously before you take taxpayer dollars to spread poison all across the land. So please, make this a proper agenda item. Listen to the community, make it easy and transparent for us to comment, and look at the data and look at alternatives before we take the work that has gone into keeping this a pristine environmental and landscape for generations to come. We need to be thinking not about the next fire season, we need to be thinking about the next 7 generations. And I urge you guys to think about the legacy that each one of you wants to be leaving. And the data in the future is going to show that this is not the solution. And so please listen to the concerns and look at your children and look at the lake that we all love dearly and preserve it for future generations and preserve the health of those concerned. Thank you.
The next hand raise is Toby Tyler. Toby, please unmute to make your comment.
Toby Tyler on behalf of Sierra Club's Tahoe Area Group.
which urges TRPA and the Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit to prohibit the use of glyphosate and other herbicides in the Caldor Restoration Project and throughout the Lake Tahoe Basin. The science is clear. Herbicides are not necessary to restore a healthy forest, and they introduce unnecessary risks into one of the world's most sensitive watersheds. The primary benefit of glyphosate is economic. It reduces short-term vegetation management costs, but cost savings are not ecological restoration. Post-fire shrubs are native vegetation and are not weeds. They stabilize soils, reduce erosion, improve soil fertility, support pollinators and wildlife, protect young conifers from heat and drought, and naturally guide forest recovery. Eliminating this biodiversity to create even-aged conifer plantations is timber management, not ecosystem restoration. The risks are substantial. Herbicides can damage soil microbial communities, reduce mycorrhizal fungi essential for tree growth, increase the transport of contaminants into streams, threaten Lake Tahoe's extraordinary water quality, reduce carbon storage, and degrade wildlife habitat. Even careful monitoring cannot prevent these impacts once chemicals are introduced into the environment. We are equally concerned about the people expected to apply these chemicals. Restoration projects often rely on seasonal contract workers operating on steep slopes under difficult conditions. No agency can realistically assume perfect compliance with safety protocols or eliminate the risk of spills, drift, equipment failures, or occupational exposure. A restoration program should not depend on exposing workers to avoidable chemical hazards when effective non-chemical alternatives already exist. Lake Tahoe deserves restoration worthy of its international significance. Before herbicides are considered, agencies must demonstrate that non-chemical methods have been fully evaluated and proven infeasible. This has not been done. We therefore urge TRPA and the Forest Service to eliminate glyphosate and other herbicides from the Caldor Restoration Project and future Tahoe Basin projects, and instead invest in true restoration methods that protect water quality, preserve biodiversity, safeguard workers, and allow natural forest recovery to build the resilient forests that Lake Tahoe deserves. Please see our more extensive written comments provided yesterday. Thank you.
And the last hand raised is Kelly Ryerson. Kelly, please unmute to make your comment.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to follow up on a few comments. I'm really concerned with the thought of taking time for an environmental impact study because I've been involved in a lot of those across the country and it always takes such a long time to do it. And we're talking about a really short time frame right now. So my recommendation would be to put a pause on the use of all conventional herbicides while further study is taking place so that we don't do the damage and then have to come back and figure out how to take care of it, which would be almost impossible. That there are plenty of biological evaluations already performed on glyphosate and other herbicides done by the EPA. And it's fascinating because given the results of those biological evaluations, they actually should have banned the use of these herbicides a long time ago, but they've continued using them anyway because they're so valuable to agriculture. But for example, glyphosate was shown to impact over 90% of endangered species when applied. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we cannot afford to do in Lake Tahoe. The other thing is that glyphosate is hydrophilic. It's water loving. It goes wherever the water goes. And of course, that's our big priority is keeping the lake safe. Another interesting thing that I learned just this week is in talking with Chubb Insurance, fire insurance. They actually don't support the use of glyphosate for fire prevention because they've found it makes things a lot more flammable because it's desiccating the brush that would otherwise provide some moisture and potentially slow the progression of wildfire. So I think a lot of the logic is missing in this overall idea to go forward using herbicides. So And finally, I just wanted to second, if you guys haven't been following the story down in Ladera Ranch with the cancer pocket, with the pediatric cancer pocket, it's heartbreaking. We definitely don't want to see that happening in Tahoe. And it really, I know we can do this and we can be the model for the entire country. So thank you so much for your continued time.
Madam Chair, there are no more hands raised to comment.
All right, with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned, and I believe we have lunch.
Yes, please grab lunch. It's right outside the hall. Thank you. Thank you all.